The first bullet pierced the car window, missing Celine's head by less than 3 inches. Only then did she understand. Falling in love with a mafia boss wasn't some cheap romance novel. It was blood. It was shattered glass. It was the smell of gunpowder burning her lungs. And it was the price to pay when a wrongly dialed photo transformed her from an ordinary waitress into the target of the entire New York underworld. But let's go back to the beginning. The night everything began to fall apart. If you want to know how an ordinary woman can fall into hell with just one wrong click, follow this story to the end. And don't forget to like and comment the city you're watching in so I know how far this story has traveled the world. The rain came down like God was pissed at Brooklyn specifically, not the gentle, romantic kind of rain you see in movies. This was the kind that soaked through your jacket in 30 seconds flat, turned the sidewalks into rivers of garbage and regret, and made you question every decision that led you to be outside at 11 p.m. on a Tuesday. Celine Vale stood under the broken awning of her apartment building, phone clutched in one hand, cheap wine buzzing through her veins, and her entire world crumbling around her feet. The photo evidence glowed on her screen. Adrian, her boyfriend of 2 years, tangled up with some blonde in what was definitely his bedroom. Same ugly lamp she'd bought him for his birthday. Same stupid motivational poster on the wall. She'd found it on his Instagram. Not even private. Just out there for the world to see because apparently Adrian Cross didn't even respect her enough to hide his cheating properly. Her hands shook. Maybe from the cold. Maybe from rage. Probably both. She'd dressed up tonight. Actually put on makeup. Wore the black lace set he'd claimed to like. Planned to surprise him after her shift at the cafe, maybe salvage whatever was left of their relationship. Instead, she'd gotten this. "Bastard," she whispered. Then louder. "Bastard." An old man walking his dog glanced at her nervously and crossed to the other side of the street. Celine didn't care. She opened her camera roll, found the photo she'd taken an hour ago in her bathroom mirror, black lace, dim lighting, just enough to show she'd tried, and pulled up her messages. She was going to send it to Adrian with a caption that would destroy him. Something cutting. Something that would make him realize exactly what he'd lost. Her thumb hovered over his contact. Then she thought, no, screw him. He doesn't deserve this. Instead, she scrolled up. Found a group chat. Her finger slipped on the wet screen. She hit send before she realized her mistake. The photo uploaded. Delivered. And Celine stared at her phone in growing horror as she saw the name at the top of the conversation. Not Adrian, not the group chat, a single contact, a number she didn't recognize. Must have been a wrong number that texted her weeks ago. Something about a delivery. She'd never bothered to delete it. No. She tried to unsend it. Too late. The message sat there, mocking her. Some stranger now had a half-dressed photo of her at 11 p.m. on a rainy Tuesday, and there was nothing she could do about it. Celine felt her face burn despite the cold rain. She typed out a frantic message. "I'm so sorry. Wrong number. Please delete that." For 3 minutes, nothing happened. Then her phone buzzed. The response was 3 words. Cold, precise. Almost amused. Interesting choice of lighting. Celine's breath caught. She stared at those words, trying to figure out if this stranger was mocking her or genuinely commenting on her photography. Because yeah, she'd actually thought about the lighting. The amber warmth from her bathroom bulb against the shadows. Old habit from her art school days before she dropped out to pay rent. She should have left it there. Apologized again. Blocked the number. Gone inside and cried into her cheap wine like a normal person. Instead, her fingers moved on their own. "Thanks. Professional photographer. Kind of." The response came faster this time. "Kind of? I work at a cafe. Photography's just a side thing. Show me your portfolio." Something about the directness made her pause. No small talk, no creepy follow-up about the photo itself. Just straight to business. Celine found herself opening her Instagram, the professional one she barely maintained, and sending the link. 3 minutes of silence. Then, "You have an eye for shadows. Most people are afraid of darkness in their composition. You lean into it." Celine read the message twice. No one had ever described her work like that. Adrian certainly never had. He'd called her photos moody in a way that sounded like criticism. Her mom said they were too dark. Her cafe manager didn't even know she did photography. But this stranger, whoever they were, actually saw what she was trying to do. "Thank you," That means a lot. What's your name? She hesitated. Every instinct screamed not to give personal information to a random number. But the wine made her bold and the rain made her reckless. And something about the clinical precision of this person's messages felt weirdly safe. Celine. You? The pause that followed felt longer than the others. When the response came, it was just a single initial, L. Celine almost laughed. Mysterious. Of course. Well, L, I should probably go die of embarrassment now. Again, sorry about the photo. Don't be. Accidents reveal more than intentions ever do. Before Celine could figure out what the hell that meant, another message appeared. Good night, Celine. She stood there in the rain for another minute, staring at her phone, trying to understand why her hands had stopped shaking. Then she went inside, drank the rest of her wine, and passed out without bothering to text Adrian at all. She forgot about the whole thing by morning. That was her first mistake. The cafe where Celine worked was the kind of place that survived on location rather than quality. Tiny, cramped, wedged between a laundromat and a bodega in a neighborhood where people needed cheap coffee more than good coffee. The espresso machine wheezed like it had emphysema. The pastries came frozen from Costco. The tips were terrible. But it was hers. Sort of. She'd worked there for 3 years, knew every regular by name and order, could make a cappuccino with her eyes closed. It wasn't art school, it wasn't a photography career, but it paid her rent, and in New York, that was enough. Wednesday morning arrived gray and cold. Celine's hangover felt like construction work happening inside her skull. She tied her hair back, put on her stained apron, and tried not to think about Adrian or mysterious strangers, or the fact that she was 27 and serving coffee to people who looked younger and more successful than she'd ever be. The morning rush was brutal, commuters barking orders, college kids demanding oat milk, everyone in a hurry, everyone irritated. By 10 a.m., Celine wanted to throw the espresso machine through the window. Then Marco, the owner, stuck his head out from the back. Celine, someone's here for you. She looked up from wiping down the counter. What? Outside. Says it's personal. Celine's stomach dropped. Adrian, it had to be. Coming to apologize or make excuses or gaslight her into thinking she'd imagined the whole thing. She untied her apron, stepped outside into the cold. A black SUV sat at the curb. Not just any SUV, the kind that cost more than Celine would make in 5 years. Sleek, tinted windows, idling like a predator. The back door opened. A man stepped out. Tall, tailored charcoal suit that fit like it had been sewn directly onto his body. Dark hair, expressionless face. He looked at Celine the way a surgeon might look at an X-ray. Clinical, thorough, revealing nothing. Celine Vale? Her mouth went dry. Who's asking? The man reached into his jacket. Celine's entire body tensed, but he just pulled out a small card, thick paper, silver lettering embossed so precisely it caught the light. He held it out. Celine took it with numb fingers. The card was heavy, expensive. It read, Lucien Moretti. No title, no phone number, just the name. Mr. Moretti requests your presence tonight, the man said. His voice matched the suit, tailored, expensive, empty of warmth. A car will pick you up at 8 p.m. Dress appropriately. Celine's brain struggled to process what was happening. I don't understand. Who is 8 p.m., Ms. Vale? The man returned to the SUV. The door closed with a solid, final sound. The vehicle pulled away from the curb and disappeared into traffic, leaving Celine standing on the sidewalk holding a business card that felt like it weighed 10 pounds. She looked down at the name again. Lucien Moretti. Why did that sound familiar? But at the salt. Celine spent her lunch break in the back room Googling the name with shaking hands. The results made her blood run cold. Lucien Moretti wasn't just some businessman. He was a ghost story whispered through New York's boroughs. Articles mentioned him in passing, always vague, always careful. Alleged connections to organized crime. Rumored to control significant portions of the city's underground economy. No criminal record despite decades of suspicion. One article from the New York Times described him as the man politicians fear to name and prosecutors can't touch. There were almost no photos. The few that existed showed a tall figure in expensive suits, always partially obscured, leaving courthouses, entering restaurants, never clearly visible, like he existed just outside the frame of reality. Celine's hands shook so badly she nearly dropped her phone. This man, this criminal, wanted to meet her tonight. Why? Then it hit her. The photo? The wrong number? Oh God. She'd sent a half-dressed photo to a Mafia boss. Celine felt like she might throw up. She thought about running, packing a bag and getting on a bus to literally anywhere else. But where would she go? And what if running made it worse? Her phone buzzed. Unknown number. The car will arrive at 7:45 p.m. Be ready. Celine stared at the message. Her finger hovered over the delete button, then over the number pad to call the police. But what would she tell them? That a powerful man invited her to dinner? That she'd accidentally sent him a photo and now felt scared? They'd laugh her out of the station. She was alone in this. By the time her shift ended at 6, Celine had made a decision. She'd go. She'd apologize. She'd explain the mistake. And maybe, hopefully, this Lucien Moretti would find the whole thing amusing and let her leave. Maybe. Celine didn't own anything appropriate for wherever she was going. Her nicest dress was 3 years old and had a wine stain on the hem. But she showered, did her makeup carefully, pulled her dark hair into something that looked intentional. At 7:43 p.m., she stood by her apartment window, watching the street. At exactly 7:45, the black SUV appeared. Her phone buzzed. We've arrived. Celine grabbed her coat, walked downstairs. Each step felt like walking toward her own execution. The same man from earlier stood beside the open back door. He didn't smile, didn't speak, just waited. Celine climbed inside. The interior smelled like leather and money, soft lighting, climate control. The door closed with a sound that felt permanent. They drove north, through Brooklyn, over the bridge into Manhattan. The city lights blurred past the tinted windows. Celine tried to memorize the route, but her panic made everything hazy. 25 minutes later, they pulled up to a building in Tribeca, all glass and steel, the kind of place where the doorman probably made more than Celine did. The man opened her door. Top floor, you're expected. Celine stepped out on shaking legs. The doorman nodded as if he'd been warned she was coming. The elevator was called. She stepped inside. The man inserted a key card and pressed the button marked PH. The doors closed. Celine watched the numbers climb. Her reflection in the polished doors looked terrified. 30 floors? 40? 50. The elevator stopped. The doors opened directly into a penthouse apartment, and Celine stepped into another world. The space was enormous. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Manhattan like a kingdom spread out below. Minimalist furniture, dark wood, everything precise, everything expensive, everything designed to intimidate. Ms. Vale. The voice came from the shadows near the windows, deep, controlled. The kind of voice that didn't need to raise itself to command attention. A figure stepped into the light. Lucien Moretti was younger than Celine expected. Mid-30s, maybe. Tall, sharp features that looked carved rather than born. Dark eyes that tracked her movement like a predator watching prey. He wore a black dress shirt with the sleeves rolled up, casual by his standards probably, but still more expensive than everything Celine owned combined. He was terrifying. Not because he looked violent, because he looked calm. The kind of calm that came from absolute certainty that he controlled every variable in the room. Mr. Moretti, Celine managed. Her voice sounded small. I need to explain. You sent me a photo last night. Not a question. A statement. He moved closer. Not threatening, just present. One you clearly didn't intend for me to receive. I'm so sorry. It was an accident. I was upset and I wasn't paying attention and I know. Celine stopped. You know? I had you investigated. He said it like he was commenting on the weather. Celine Marie Vale, 27, works at Cafe Benedetto in Brooklyn. No criminal record, no significant debts. Recently ended a relationship with Adrian Cross after discovering his infidelity. You take photographs as a hobby. You're unremarkable. The word landed like a slap. Unremarkable. Then why am I here? Celine's fear was giving way to something else. Anger, maybe. Or just exhaustion. If I'm so unremarkable, why drag me to your penthouse fortress? Something flickered in Lucien's expression, almost like surprise, like he wasn't used to being questioned. Because your photography isn't unremarkable. He moved to a side table, picked up a tablet, and turned it toward her. Her Instagram portfolio was pulled up. He'd scrolled through every photo. You see things other people miss. Shadows, negative space, the parts people try to hide. Celine stared at him. You brought me here to compliment my photography? I brought you here because I'm curious. Lucien set down the tablet. Most people who accidentally contact me are terrified. They grovel, they beg, they offer me things. You apologized once and moved on. Then we had a conversation about composition and lighting. Do you know how rare that is? Conversations about art? Honesty. The word came out sharp, final. Everyone lies to me, Ms. Vale. Everyone wants something. Everyone performs. But you didn't know who I was. So you spoke to me like a person. Celine's heartbeat started to slow, just a fraction. So this isn't about the photo? The photo was an accident. Accidents interest me. Lucien gestured toward the dining area. A table was set. 2 places. Wine breathing in a decanter that probably cost more than her rent. Have dinner with me. It wasn't really a request. Celine swallowed. And if I say no? Then my driver will take you home. You'll never hear from me again. He met her eyes. But I think you're curious too. He was right. Celine hated that he was right. Because beneath the fear, beneath the absolute insanity of this situation, there was something else. A pull. The same thing she felt when she talked to Elle last night. This man was dangerous, probably a criminal, definitely someone she should run from. But he looked at her photographs and saw what she was actually trying to say. Okay, Celine heard herself whisper. 1 dinner. Lucien almost smiled. Almost. 1 dinner. The meal was Italian. Of course it was. Prepared by a private chef who materialized from a kitchen Celine hadn't even noticed, served each course, and vanished like smoke. They didn't talk about the photo. They didn't talk about his business. Instead, Lucien asked her about photography, about why she dropped out of art school, about what she saw when she looked at shadows. And Celine found herself answering honestly. Everyone takes pictures of light, she said, halfway through the pasta course. The wine had loosened her tongue. But darkness is more interesting. It's where people hide things, where truth lives. Lucien watched her over his wine glass. You sound like you're describing people, not photographs. Maybe I am. And what do you see when you look at me? The question hung in the air between them. Celine should have deflected, should have given some safe, polite answer. Instead, she met his eyes. Someone who's tired, she said quietly. Someone who's been alone for a very long time. The silence that followed felt like falling. Lucien set down his wine glass with careful precision. For a moment, Celine thought she'd made a terrible mistake. Then he spoke, his voice rougher than before. You're perceptive. You asked. Most people tell me what they think I want to hear. I'm not most people. No. Something shifted in his expression. Something almost vulnerable. You're not. They finished dinner in a sense that felt less hostile, almost comfortable. When the chef cleared the plates and disappeared again, Lucien stood and moved to the windows. Come here. Celine hesitated, then followed. The view was staggering. All of Manhattan spread out below them, lights stretching to infinity. The city that never slept, never stopped, never cared who you were or what you wanted. This is what I see every night, Lucien said. His voice was different now, quieter, less controlled. A kingdom of broken people pretending to be whole, everyone lying, everyone hiding, everyone afraid. Are you afraid? Celine asked. He didn't answer immediately. When he did, it sounded like a confession. I'm afraid of what happens when you stop being afraid of me. Celine looked at him. Really looked. Past the expensive clothes and the dangerous reputation and the controlled exterior. And she saw what her camera would see, the exhaustion in his shoulders, the loneliness in his eyes, the wound he carried that never healed. I'm still afraid, she admitted. But I'm curious, too. Lucien turned to face her. They stood close enough that Celine could feel the heat of him, close enough to see the exact moment his control slipped just a fraction. That makes you dangerous, he said softly. To you? To both of us. Before Celine could respond, Lucien's phone buzzed. The moment shattered. He checked the screen and his expression went carefully blank again. My driver will take you home. He stepped back, putting distance between them. Professional again. Controlled. Thank you for dinner, Ms. Vale. The dismissal was clear. Celine felt like she had been slapped. One moment he was vulnerable, almost human. The next, she was being sent away like hired help. Right. She grabbed her coat. Thanks for the free meal, I guess. She was halfway to the elevator when his voice stopped her. Celine. She turned. Lucien stood backlit by the city lights, and for just a second, he looked as lost as she felt. If you're ever in trouble, he said quietly, call me. I don't have your number. Her phone buzzed in her pocket. When she checked it, a new contact had been added, L, the same initial from last night. Celine looked up, but Lucien had already turned back to the windows. The elevator doors closed, and she rode down 50 floors in stunned silence, trying to understand what the hell had just happened. Disc. Celine told herself it was over. One weird dinner with a dangerous man. A story she'd never tell anyone because who would believe it anyway? She'd go back to her life, her cafe, her photography, her normal, unremarkable existence. That lasted exactly 4 days. On Sunday morning, a package arrived at her apartment. No return address. Inside was a camera, professional grade, the kind she drooled over in photography stores but could never afford. With it, a note in precise handwriting. Your phone camera doesn't do your eye for shadows justice? L. Celine stared at the camera for 20 minutes. She should send it back. Should want nothing to do with Lucien Moretti and his dangerous world. Instead, she picked it up, felt the weight of it. The possibility. Her phone buzzed. There's a charity gala next Friday. I need a photographer. Interested? Celine's fingers hovered over the keyboard. Every rational part of her brain screamed to decline, to run, to stay in her safe, boring, unremarkable life. She thought about Adrian, about the cafe, about being 27 and invisible. She thought about the way Lucien looked at her photographs and saw what no one else did. She typed 2 words. I'm interested. The response came immediately. Good. Wear something elegant. I'll send details. Celine set down her phone and picked up the camera. Through the viewfinder, her tiny apartment looked different. The shadows deeper, the light sharper. She took a photo of her window, the city beyond it, all that darkness and light tangled together. She didn't know it yet, but she'd just taken the first step into a world she'd never escape. And somewhere across the city, in a penthouse high above the streets, Lucien Moretti looked at his phone and allowed himself the smallest smile. Because he'd found something rare, something honest, something that might destroy them both. The week that followed felt surreal. Celine worked her cafe shifts in a daze, jumping every time her phone buzzed. Lucien sent her details about the gala, what time to arrive, where to send her portfolio for verification, a dress code that made her panic because she definitely didn't own anything that qualified as elegant formal. On Wednesday, another package arrived. Inside was a dress. Midnight blue. Simple, but devastating. The kind of thing that cost more than her monthly rent. With it, another note. Your shadows need the right frame. Celine should have sent it back. Should have been insulted that he was essentially buying her clothing. Should have recognized all the red flags screaming that this was a bad idea. Instead, she tried it on. It fit perfectly. Friday arrived too fast. Celine spent the morning at the cafe dropping things and forgetting orders. Marco finally sent her home early. You sick or something? Something, Celine muttered. At 6 p.m., she stood in her bathroom trying to do her makeup with shaking hands. The dress hung on the back of the door like an accusation. Or a promise. She wasn't sure which. Her phone buzzed. The car will arrive at 7. Don't be nervous, easy for you to say, she typed back. I'm nervous too. Celine stared at that message. Lucien Moretti, the man who commanded an empire of shadows, was nervous. About her. The thought should have terrified her. Instead, it made her smile. What? The gala was held at some museum in Manhattan, the kind of place Celine had walked past 100 times but never entered because people like her didn't belong in marble halls with 20-foot ceilings. The SUV dropped her at a side entrance. A woman with a clipboard and an earpiece barely glanced at her. Name? Celine Vale. I'm the photographer. The woman checked her list. 3rd floor. Someone will meet you. Celine climbed the stairs, her new camera heavy around her neck, her heart hammering against her ribs. The 3rd floor opened into a ballroom that looked like something out of a movie. Chandeliers dripping crystal. A string quartet playing something classical and haunting. People in tuxedos and gowns worth more than cars. And in the center of it all, surrounded by men in expensive suits, stood Lucien. He looked different than he had in his penthouse. More on. More controlled. He was listening to some older man with silver hair, his expression polite but distant, and Celine realized she was watching him perform. Then his eyes found her across the room. Everything stopped. Lucien excused himself from his conversation with a few quiet words. The men around him looked disappointed but didn't argue. He crossed the ballroom floor like he owned it, which Celine suspected he probably did in some indirect way. He stopped in front of her. His eyes traveled over the dress, the camera, her face. You look... He paused, searching for words. Lucien Moretti, who always knew exactly what to say, looked uncertain. You look perfect. Celine's breath caught. The dress is... Not the dress. His voice dropped lower. You. Before Celine could figure out how to respond to that, a woman materialized at Lucien's elbow, older, elegant, wearing diamonds that could fund a small country. Lucien, darling, you're neglecting your guests. Mrs. Castellano. Lucien's tone went carefully polite. May I introduce Celine Vale? She's documenting tonight's event. The woman's eyes swept over Celine with the kind of assessment that felt like being X-rayed. How charming. Another one of your projects? Something dangerous flickered across Lucien's face. Careful, Victoria. The warning in his voice made Mrs. Castellano's smile tighten. Of course, and enjoy your evening, dear. She glided away. Celine released a breath she hadn't realized she was holding. Project? She asked quietly. Ignore her. Lucien's jaw was tight. She's complicated. Everyone here seems complicated. That's because everyone here is lying about something. He looked down at her. Photograph whatever you want, but stay close. Some of these people... He trailed off. Just stay where I can see you. There was something protective in his tone. Something possessive. It should have bothered Celine. Instead, it made her feel safer than she had in years. Oh. Celine spent the next 2 hours photographing a world she'd never imagined existed. Politicians laughing with men who were definitely criminals. Businessmen making deals in corners. Wealth and power and corruption all dressed up in tuxedos and pearls. And through her lens, she saw the shadows. The exhaustion behind the smiles. The fear beneath the laughter. The loneliness of people who had everything except honesty. She photographed it all. Around 10 p.m., she needed air. The ballroom felt suffocating. Too many people performing. Too many lies stacked on top of each other. She found a balcony. Stepped outside. The night air hit her like freedom. You ran away. Celine turned. Lucien stood in the doorway, tie loosened, looking more human than he had all night. I needed a break from all the... She gestured vaguely. Bullshit? I was going to say networking, but yeah, bullshit works. Lucien almost smiled. He joined her at the railing. They stood in silence, looking out at the city. This is my life, he said quietly. Rooms full of people who smile while planning to stab me in the back. Conversations that mean nothing. Alliances built on fear instead of trust. Sounds exhausting. It is. He looked at her. You're the first real thing I've encountered in months. Celine's heart did something complicated in her chest. I'm not that special. You're honest. That's rarer than you think. Even when honesty is stupid, especially then. They stood close enough that Celine could feel the heat of him. close enough to see the exhaustion in his eyes, the same loneliness she'd noticed that first night. "Can I ask you something?" she said. "Depends on the question." "Why me? Really? You could have any photographer in the city. Hell, you could have any person in that room. So why drag me into this?" Lucian was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was rough. "Because when you look at me, you don't see what everyone else sees. You don't see power or money or fear. You see—" He stopped. "What do you see?" Celine thought about lying, about giving him something safe. Instead, someone who's trapped, someone who built a kingdom and realized he's locked inside it. The silence that followed felt like free fall. Then Lucien reached out and touched her face, just his fingertips against her jaw. Gentle, questioning. "You terrify me," he whispered. "Good," Celine heard herself say. "You terrify me too." He leaned closer, his forehead almost touching hers, his breath warm against her lips. "We should stop this," he said, "before it becomes something we can't control." Probably. Neither of them moved. "Celine!" Whatever he was about to say died as gunfire erupted inside the ballroom. The sound was unmistakable, loud, sharp, wrong. Lucien's entire body went rigid. His hand dropped from her face, and suddenly he wasn't the uncertain man from seconds ago. He was something else, something deadly. "Stay here," he commanded. "Don't move. Don't go inside. Do you understand?" Celine nodded, her heart hammering. Lucien pulled a gun from somewhere inside his jacket, because of course he had a gun, and moved toward the balcony doors. More gunfire, screaming, the sounds of chaos. He paused at the door, looked back at her one last time. "When this is over," he said, "we're finishing that conversation." Then he disappeared inside, and Celine was alone on the balcony with the sound of violence echoing through marble halls, wondering what the hell she'd gotten herself into. And somewhere in the ballroom, between the gunfire and screaming, a war was starting. One that would drag Celine down into Lucien's world, whether she wanted it or not. The gunfire stopped as suddenly as it started. Celine stood frozen on the balcony, her camera clutched against her chest like a shield, listening to the silence that followed violence. It felt worse than the shooting, because silence meant people were dead or hiding or waiting for the next round, and she didn't know which. She counted her breaths. 1, 2, 3. Lucien had told her to stay put, but every instinct screamed at her to run, to get as far from this place as possible. Then she heard his voice through the doors, low, controlled, giving orders. "Get them out through the kitchen. Now! I don't care what they saw. Move!" Footsteps, crying, the shuffle of expensive shoes on marble floors. Celine moved to the door, pressed herself against the wall beside it. Through the glass, she could see the ballroom. Overturned tables, shattered champagne glasses, a chandelier swaying like something out of a nightmare, and bodies. Not many. 3, maybe 4. Men in suits lying in positions that didn't look human anymore. Lucien stood in the center of the destruction, gun still in his hand, talking to a man with blood on his shirt. Not his blood. Someone else's. They spoke in rapid Italian, too fast for Celine to catch, even if she understood the language. Then Lucien's eyes found her through the glass. The relief that crossed his face lasted maybe half a second before control locked back down. He said something sharp to the man beside him, then crossed to the balcony doors. When he opened them, Celine saw the violence on him. Not blood, not dirt, just the residue of what he'd done. The cold certainty in his eyes that he'd killed people tonight and would do it again without hesitation. "I told you to stay put," he said quietly. "I did." "You're shaking." Celine looked down at her hands. He was right. The camera trembled in her grip like something alive. Lucien reached out slowly, like approaching a wounded animal, and took the camera from her, set it carefully on a nearby table. Then he took her hands in his. They were warm, steady, the hands of someone who just fired a gun and felt nothing about it. "Look at me." Celine forced herself to meet his eyes. "Are you hurt?" he asked. "No." "Did you see anything?" "Just aftermath." "Good." He squeezed her hands once. "I need you to leave. Right now. My driver will take you home. Don't talk to the police. Don't talk to anyone. Do you understand?" What happened? Celine, what? Happened. Lucien's jaw tightened. For a moment, she thought he wouldn't answer. Then, someone tried to kill me. They failed. That's all you need to know. People died. Bad people. He said it like that justified everything. Maybe in his world it did. I need you to go, please. There was that word again. Please. Like she had a choice, like this was a request instead of a command wrapped in polite language. Celine pulled her hands from his. You knew this might happen. That's why you told me to stay close. You brought me here knowing someone might start shooting. I didn't know. Bullshit. The word landed hard. Lucien's expression went carefully blank. The same mask he wore in the ballroom. The one that hid everything. You're right, he said finally. I suspected something might happen. I had security in place. I thought it was handled. And me? Was I just... what? Bait? A distraction? You were supposed to be safe. Safe? Celine laughed, and it came out jagged, broken. I'm standing in a ballroom full of dead bodies. I don't feel very safe. Lucien stepped closer, not threatening, desperate. I would never put you in danger intentionally. You have to believe that. I don't have to believe anything. Celine grabbed her camera. Her hand still shook. I'm done. This whole thing, the dinner, the dress, the gala, it was a mistake. I should have never answered your text. She moved past him toward the door. Celine, wait. But she was already walking through the ballroom, past the overturned tables, past the men cleaning up evidence like they'd done this 100 times before, past the bodies covered in white sheets that hadn't been there minutes ago. Someone tried to stop her at the stairs. A young guy with a gun. Lucien's voice cut through. Let her go! Celine didn't look back. She took the stairs 2 at a time, the dress Lucien bought her catching on her heels, her camera banging against her ribs. The SUV sat at the side entrance like it had been waiting. The same driver, the same blank expression. He opened the door without a word. Celine climbed inside and the door closed, and then she was driving away from the museum, away from the gunfire, away from Lucien and his world of polite violence. She made it 3 blocks before she started crying. Meantime, the driver dropped her at her apartment without speaking. Celine climbed the stairs to her door, got inside, locked every lock, and slid down to the floor with her back against the wood. Her phone buzzed. She ignored it. It buzzed again, and again, and again. Finally, she looked. 12 messages. All from Lucien. I'm sorry, please answer your phone. Let me explain. You're right, I should have told you. Celine, please. I just need to know you're safe. The last one made her laugh. A bitter, angry sound. He wanted to know if she was safe, like he hadn't been the one who put her in danger in the first place. She typed out a response. Don't contact me again. Then she blocked his number. For 3 minutes, she felt powerful, in control. Then the reality crashed down. She'd just blocked a mob boss, a man who had people killed for less than outright rejection. Her hands started shaking again. Celine stood up, stripped off the expensive dress and left it in a heap on the floor, washed off her makeup, put on sweatpants and a ratty t-shirt, tried to feel normal again. Her phone buzzed. Unknown number. Blocking me doesn't change what happened tonight. Her stomach dropped. Or what's happening between us. I'll give you space. But this isn't over. L. Celine stared at the messages. Then she turned off her phone completely and crawled into bed, and for the first time in years, she wished she was anywhere but New York. Okay. 3 days passed. Celine worked her shifts at the cafe in a fog. Smiled at customers, made coffee, pretended everything was normal. But every time the door opened, her heart jumped. Every black car that drove past made her flinch. Marco noticed. You good? He asked on Tuesday afternoon. Fine. You don't look fine. You look like you saw a ghost. Close enough, Celine thought. That night, she made the mistake of Googling the museum gala. The news coverage was minimal. Minor incident at charity event. No casualties reported. Police investigating. No casualties. Celine had seen the bodies, had watched them being covered with sheets. But according to the official record, nothing had happened. That was Lucien's power. The ability to make violence disappear. To rewrite reality. It terrified her more than the gunfire had. On Wednesday morning, she found an envelope under her apartment door. No postage, no return address, just her name in precise handwriting. Inside was a check, $20,000. The memo line read, "For your work." Celine stared at it for a full minute. $20,000 for a few hours of photography, enough to pay off her credit cards, cover rent for months, buy better equipment, blood money. She ripped it in half, then quarters, then kept tearing until it was confetti on her kitchen counter. Her phone rang. New number. She'd stopped blocking them because Lucian seemed to have an infinite supply. Against her better judgment, she answered, "What?" "You destroyed the check." Lucian's voice, calm as always, infuriating. "Are you watching me? I have someone posted outside your building. For your protection." "I don't need protection. I need you to leave me alone." "After what happened at the gala." "Nothing happened at the gala." Celine's voice went sharp. "According to the news, it was a minor incident. No casualties, remember?" Silence on the other end. Then, "You saw the bodies." "Yeah, I saw them. I also saw them disappear." "It's complicated." "Everything with you is complicated." Celine paced her tiny kitchen. "I'm just a waitress, Lucian. I take pictures, I serve coffee, I live a simple life. I don't want to be part of whatever world you're in." "Then why haven't you gone to the police?" The question stopped her cold. Because he was right. If she really wanted out, she would have called the cops days ago, told them about the shootings, the bodies, the cover-up. But she hadn't. "Because I'm not stupid," she said finally. "I know what happens to people who cross you." "Is that really why? What other reason would there be?" "Maybe because you know I didn't lie to you." His voice softened. "I've been honest about who I am, what I do. The only thing I hid was the danger, and that was to protect you." "Great job with that." "I know." He sounded tired, more human than she'd heard him. "I failed, I'm sorry, but I can keep you safe if you let me." "By posting guards outside my building? By throwing money at me? That's not safety. That's control." "It's both." At least he was honest about that. Celine pressed her forehead against her kitchen window. Outside, she could see the black sedan parked across the street. Tinted windows, idling engine. One of Lucian's people. "Make them leave," she said quietly. "No." "Lucien, someone tried to kill me 3 days ago, Celine. Whoever hired them knows I was with you, which means you're a target now too. So no, I'm not pulling security. I'm not leaving you unprotected." "You don't get to make that choice." "I just did." The sheer arrogance of it made her want to scream, but underneath the anger was something else. Something she didn't want to examine too closely. Relief. Because as much as she hated being watched, being controlled, being pulled into Lucian's orbit, she was also terrified of what might happen without him. "I need time," she said. "Space to figure out what I want." "How much time?" "I don't know. Weeks, months, maybe forever." Another pause. Then, "I'll give you 1 week, 7 days. After that we talk, face to face. And if I say no, then I'll walk away." He said it like it cost him something. "But the security stays. That's not negotiable." Celine wanted to argue, wanted to tell him where he could shove his security and his money and his entire dangerous world. Instead, she said, 1 week. 1 week. The line went dead. Celine looked at the black sedan across the street. As she watched, someone inside tilted a coffee cup in what might have been a greeting. She closed her blinds and tried to pretend she wasn't grateful they were there. The week crawled by. Celine worked, slept badly, avoided the news, kept her blinds closed. Every night, the black sedan sat across the street. Every morning, it was still there when she left for work. On Thursday, one of her regulars asked if she had a stalker. "Something like that," Celine muttered. Marco overheard. "You want me to call the cops?" "No, it's handled." But nothing felt handled. Friday night, she got a text from an unknown number. "Your ex-boyfriend is asking about you." Celine stared at the message, then typed back. "Who is this?" "Marcus. I'm parked outside your building. Adrian Cross came by an hour ago. Asked your neighbors which apartment was yours. Thought you should know." Ice ran down her spine. She hadn't thought about Adrian in weeks. Not since the night she'd sent the accidental photo. He'd tried calling a few times after she'd ghosted him, but eventually gave up. Why was he asking about her now? What did he want? Didn't stick around to find out. But he looked nervous. Kept checking over his shoulder. Celine's mind raced. Maybe Adrian had seen the news coverage from the gala. Maybe he recognized her name somehow. Maybe... Her apartment buzzer rang. She jumped so hard she dropped her phone. The buzzer rang again, insistent. Celine moved to the intercom. Who is it? It's me. Adrian's voice, strained, scared. Celine, I need to talk to you. It's important. Every instinct told her not to buzz him up, but curiosity won. Come up. She unlocked her door but left the chain on. When Adrian appeared at the top of the stairs, he looked terrible, pale, sweating, his expensive suit rumpled like he'd been wearing it for days. Can I come in? He asked. Depends. Why are you here? Because you're in danger, serious danger. Celine almost laughed. You're a little late with that warning. I'm serious. These people. He looked over his shoulder like someone might be listening. Can we please not do this in the hallway? Against her better judgment, Celine slid the chain off and let him inside. Adrian stepped in and immediately moved away from the windows. His eyes darted around her tiny apartment like he was checking for threats. You look paranoid, Celine said. That's because I am. He ran a hand through his hair. It was shaking. How do you know Lucien Moretti? The question hit like a fist. How do you know I know him? Answer the question, Celine. No, you show up at my apartment after ghosting me for weeks, looking like you haven't slept in days, and demand answers? Screw that. You first. Adrian's jaw worked. Then he pulled out his phone and showed her a photo. It was from the gala. Celine on the balcony, Lucien touching her face, the moment before the gunfire started, taken from inside the ballroom, a surveillance angle. Where did you get this? Celine's voice came out hoarse. People I work for. You're a corporate attorney. I'm a lot of things. Adrian pocketed his phone. And one of those things is connected to people who want Lucien Moretti dead. The room tilted. Celine grabbed the back of her couch to steady herself. What? The Valenti family. Ever heard of them? She shook her head. They're Moretti's rivals, have been for years, and I've been feeding them information about his businesses, his deals, his movements. Adrian looked sick saying it. When I saw you with him at the gala, I thought maybe you were working an angle. Maybe you were smarter than I gave you credit for. You thought I was what? Playing him. Getting close for information. The way I... He stopped. Celine's brain struggled to process what she was hearing. The way you what, Adrian? He didn't answer, and suddenly, pieces started clicking together. The photo she'd sent to the wrong number. Lucien's investigation finding nothing suspicious in her background. Adrian's number mysteriously in her phone. You set me up, she whispered. No, I didn't. It wasn't supposed to go like this. What was it supposed to be? Adrian paced her small living room. The Valentis wanted someone close to Moretti, someone he'd trust, someone innocent. When I heard you talking about that photographer number you'd accidentally texted, I thought, you switched the contact in my phone. Celine's voice was dead, flat. That wasn't a wrong number. You programmed Lucien Moretti's number into my phone and labeled it as something random. I didn't know you'd send him a photo like that, but you knew I'd eventually text it. You were waiting for me to message the delivery guy or whatever you called the contact. Adrian's silence was confirmation enough. Celine felt like she might throw up. Everything had been manipulated. Their entire connection, Lucien's interest, the dinner, the gala, all of it built on Adrian's betrayal. Why? She asked quietly. The Valentis have dirt on me. Real dirt. Tax fraud. Embezzlement. If I didn't help them, I'd go to prison. So you used me instead. I didn't think you'd actually get close to him. I thought he'd ignore you or scare you off, and that would be the end of it. But then you kept meeting him. You went to the gala. Adrian's voice cracked. Do you have any idea how dangerous Lucien Moretti is? Yeah, I do. I watched people die 3 days ago. Adrian went even paler. The shooting, that was the Valentis. They tried to take him out and failed. Now they're panicking, and they think you're leverage. Ice flooded Celine's veins. What does that mean? It means they know Moretti cares about you, which makes you valuable, which makes you... A sound came from the hallway. Footsteps. Heavy, fast. Adrian's eyes went wide. No, they followed me. I was careful. Celine's door exploded inward. 3 men, guns, moving with professional precision. Marcus, Lucien's guard, came up the stairs behind them, already pulling his weapon, but he was too slow. One of the intruders fired twice. Marcus went down. Celine screamed. Adrian tried to run, made it 2 steps before someone grabbed him by his collar and threw him against the wall hard enough to crack the plaster. Then a gun pressed against Celine's temple, and everything stopped. Don't move. The voice was calm, professional. You scream, you die. You run, you die. You understand? Celine nodded, her entire body trembling. The man holding Adrian spoke. Mr. Cross, you were supposed to bring her to us, not warn her. I didn't want... What you want stopped mattering when you took our money. The man's voice was devoid of emotion, almost bored. Now we have to do this the messy way. He shot Adrian twice in the chest. The sound was deafening in the small apartment. Adrian's body crumpled to the floor, blood spreading across the worn carpet, his eyes still open in shock. Celine couldn't breathe, couldn't think, couldn't process what she'd just witnessed. The gun at her temple pressed harder. Let's go, Ms. Vale. We have someone who wants to meet you. She tried to fight, tried to scream, but someone jabbed a needle into her neck, and the world went fuzzy at the edges. The last thing she saw before everything went black was Adrian's body on her floor. And the last coherent thought she had was, Lucien was right. She should have let him protect her. A sex. Celine woke up with her head pounding and her wrists bound to a metal chair. The room was dark, cold. She could smell water, hear it lapping against something nearby. A warehouse by the docks, maybe. Somewhere no one would hear her scream. Her vision swam as she tried to focus. Gradually, shapes resolved themselves. Concrete walls. Small windows too high to reach. Industrial lighting that barely worked. And a man sitting across from her. He was older, 60s maybe. Silver hair, expensive suit. He held a glass of something amber, whiskey probably, and watched her with the detached interest of someone examining an insect. You're awake. Good. Celine's voice came out cracked. Who are you? Vincent Valenti. He took a sip of his drink. I apologize for the accommodations. This wasn't my first choice of venue, but your boyfriend has made doing business in civilized locations rather difficult. He's not my boyfriend. No? Vincent smiled. It didn't reach his eyes. Then perhaps you can explain why Lucien Moretti, a man known for his emotional detachment, has had armed guards watching your apartment for 5 days. Why he's been calling every contact he has trying to locate you for the past 6 hours. Celine's heart jumped. 6 hours. She'd been unconscious for 6 hours. I don't know what you want from me. Oh, I think you do. Vincent stood and moved closer. He wasn't threatening, didn't need to be. The men with guns standing in the shadows did that for him. Your leverage, Ms. Vale. The woman who made New York's most dangerous man go soft. I barely know him. And yet he's currently tearing this city apart looking for you. 12 of my operations have been hit in the last 4 hours. Warehouses burned, accounts frozen. People arrested on charges that appeared out of nowhere. Vincent's voice stayed level, but anger simmered underneath. That's not the behavior of a man who barely knows someone. Celine's mind raced. Lucien was looking for her, which meant he knew she'd been taken. Which meant, Marcus, she whispered, your people shot him. He's alive, wounded, but alive. He called Moretti before losing consciousness. Vincent returned to his chair, which is when things became interesting. Do you know what Lucien's first move was? Celine shook her head. He offered me $10 million for your safe return. No questions asked, no retaliation. 10 million. The number didn't feel real. I declined, of course, because you're worth far more than money to me. Vincent finished his drink. You're the thing that will finally break him. You're going to kill me. Eventually. But first, I'm going to make sure Lucien knows you're suffering, that you're afraid, that he failed to protect you. Vincent's smile was cold. I'm going to destroy him psychologically before I destroy him literally. And you, my dear, are the instrument of that destruction. Celine's chest tightened. This was it. This was how she died. Not from gunfire or accident, but as a pawn in someone else's war. He won't come for me, she said, trying to sound certain. We barely know each other. He'll cut his losses. You really believe that? Yes. Vincent laughed. Actually laughed. You poor naive girl. Lucien Moretti doesn't care about losses. He cares about control, about ownership, and whether you realize it or not, he's decided you belong to him. The words sent a chill through her, because part of her knew Vincent was right. What happens now? She asked quietly. Now we wait. We let Lucien tear himself apart searching. We send him photos of you, alive but terrified. We make him desperate. Vincent stood. And when he's vulnerable enough, we'll arrange a meeting. Tell him he can have you back in exchange for his empire. He won't agree to that. He will, because men like Lucien Moretti have one weakness. They're capable of love. And love makes even the most dangerous men do stupid things. Vincent moved to the door, paused, looked back at her. Someone will bring you water, food. We need you alive and relatively undamaged for the photographs. Try not to cause trouble. The men guarding you have orders to keep you breathing, but nowhere does it say they can't hurt you. Then he was gone. Celine was left alone in the dark, bound to a metal chair, with nothing but her fear and the sound of water lapping against the docks. She thought about Lucien, about the way he'd touched her face on the balcony, the vulnerability in his eyes when he'd asked what she saw in him. Someone who's trapped, someone who built a kingdom and realized he's locked inside it. Now she understood exactly how he felt, because she was trapped too. In a game she never wanted to play, with stakes she couldn't comprehend, and somewhere out there, Lucien Moretti was burning the city down trying to find her. Celine closed her eyes and did something she hadn't done in years. She prayed he'd find her in time. Time stopped meaning anything in the dark. Celine didn't know if she'd been in the warehouse for hours or days. The single bulb overhead flickered on and off at random intervals, and the small window near the ceiling showed only darkness. No sunlight, no way to track the passage of time except by the growing ache in her shoulders and the steady throb of hunger in her stomach. They'd brought her water twice. Once, someone had shoved a protein bar through the door and told her to eat it while still bound to the chair. She'd refused out of spite, then regretted it an hour later when her hands shook from low blood sugar. The second time they brought water, a different guard came. Younger. Nervous energy radiating off him like heat. He'd set the bottle down just out of reach and stared at her with eyes that made her skin crawl. You're prettier than the photo, he'd said. Celine hadn't responded, had learned quickly that silence was safer than engagement. He'd lingered in the doorway. Vincent says we can't touch you, but he didn't say we can't look. Get out, Celine had said quietly. Make me. Her heart had hammered against her ribs, but she'd kept her voice level. Vincent wants me undamaged for the photographs. You really want to explain to him why I have bruises? The guard had hesitated, then sneered. Bitch! But he'd left. Celine had counted that as a victory, however small. Now she sat in the renewed silence, testing the restraints around her wrists for the 100th time. Plastic zip ties, industrial strength, the kind that bit deeper every time she moved. Her hands had gone numb an hour ago. She thought about Lucien, wondered if Vincent was telling the truth about him tearing the city apart. Part of her hoped it was true. The other part, the part that had watched people die at the gala, hoped he'd stay away. Let her go. Save himself. The door opened. Vincent Valenti entered with a phone in his hand and 2 guards flanking him. He looked refreshed, rested, like kidnapping women was just another item on his daily agenda. Good news, Ms. Vale. We've made contact with Mr. Moretti. Celine's pulse jumped. What did he say? He wants proof you're alive. Vincent held up the phone. We're going to take some photos. I need you to look appropriately distressed. Go to hell. I appreciate the spirit, truly, but you will cooperate. Vincent's voice stayed pleasant, conversational, which made it worse. Because if you don't, I'll have my men break one of your fingers. Then we'll take the photos anyway, and you'll look very distressed indeed. So the question is whether you want cosmetic suffering or actual suffering. Celine's jaw tightened. She wanted to spit in his face. Wanted to tell him Lucian would kill him slowly for this. Instead, she said, "Fine. Excellent choice." One of the guards moved behind her and grabbed her hair, yanking her head back. Celine gasped at the sudden pain. The camera flash went off. Once, twice, 3 times. Then the guard released her, and her head snapped forward. Vincent checked the photos with the satisfaction of an artist reviewing his work. Perfect, exactly the right amount of fear in your eyes. Lucien will appreciate these. You're insane. I'm practical. Vincent pocketed his phone. This isn't personal, Ms. Vale, it's business. Lucian has been a thorn in my family's operations for 15 years. He's cost us money, territory, respect. This is simply the most efficient way to remove him from the board. By using me, by exploiting his weakness. You. Vincent moved closer, studying her like a specimen. I have to admit, I didn't expect you to be his type. You're ordinary, plain even. What does a man like Lucien Moretti see in a waitress who takes pictures? The casual cruelty of it stung more than Celine wanted to admit. Maybe he sees someone real, she said quietly. Someone who doesn't lie to him for money or power or fear. How romantic. Vincent's smile was cold. And how useless. In my world, Ms. Vale, honesty is a liability. The people who survive are the ones who know when to lie. He turned to leave, paused at the door. The photos will be delivered within the hour. After that, we wait for Lucien to make his move. Try to get some rest. You'll need your strength for what comes next. The door closed, locked. Celine was alone again. She let her head drop forward, exhaustion pulling at her like gravity. Her wrists burned. Her shoulders screamed. But worse than the physical pain was the helplessness. She was a pawn, a tool, a thing to be used and discarded, and there was nothing she could do about it. Lucien Moretti stood in the penthouse that no longer felt like home and stared at the photos Vincent Valenti had sent. Celine, bound to a chair, hair pulled back to expose her face, eyes wide with fear but also defiance, trying to be brave even while being held captive by men who would kill her without hesitation. His hands shook. Lucien didn't shake. He was famous for his control, his ability to compartmentalize, to make decisions based on logic rather than emotion. But looking at those photos, all he felt was rage. "Boss!" Tony's voice came from behind him, careful, cautious. "We've traced the location. Warehouse district in Red Hook. 3 possible buildings that match the background details in the photos. How long to mobilize?" 20 minutes. But Vincent's expecting you. He'll have guards, probably 30, 40 men. And he'll have Celine in a position where one wrong move means she dies. Lucien's jaw tightened. "What are you suggesting?" "Negotiation. Give him what he wants. We can rebuild territory. We can't bring her back from the dead." The rational part of Lucien's brain knew Tony was right. This was a trap. Vincent wanted him desperate, wanted him to make a mistake. But the other part, the part that had touched Celine's face on that balcony and felt something he'd thought was dead, didn't care about traps. "We're going in," Lucien said flatly. "Full assault. I want every available man. I want the Valenti operations burned to the ground. I want Vincent's contacts frozen, his suppliers cut off, his allies threatened. I want him to understand that taking her was the worst mistake of his miserable life." "Lucien!" "She's innocent." The words came out rough, raw. "She got pulled into this because of me, because I was selfish enough to keep her close even knowing the danger. So yes, we're going in, and we're bringing her home." Tony studied him for a long moment, then nodded. "I'll make the calls." He left. Lucien was alone with the photos. He looked at Celine's face, at the fear she was trying so hard to hide. "I should have trusted you," he'd said to her after the gala shooting. But the truth was, he'd never stopped trusting her. He'd just been too afraid to admit how much she'd come to matter. Now she was paying the price for his cowardice. Lucien pulled out his phone and made a call. It was answered on the first ring. "It's me," he said. "I need a favor." Ding. Celine woke to the sound of shouting. She jerked upright, or tried to. The zip ties reminded her where she was, what was happening. She blinked against the darkness, trying to orient herself. The warehouse was no longer quiet. Footsteps pounded overhead, men yelling orders in Italian, the metallic sound of weapons being loaded. Something was happening. The door to her room burst open. The nervous guard from before stood there, gun in hand, looking panicked. "Move," he barked. "I'm tied to a chair, genius." He crossed the room and cut the zip ties with a knife. Celine's hands dropped free, and pain exploded through her shoulders as blood rushed back into her arms. She bit back a scream. The guard grabbed her bicep and hauled her upright. Her legs nearly buckled. How long had she been sitting? Hours? Days? "What's going on?" she managed. "Moretti." The guard's voice shook. "He's here." Hope and terror flooded through Celine in equal measure. Lucien was here, which meant he'd come for her. But it also meant people were about to die. The guard dragged her through the warehouse. It was bigger than she'd realized. Multiple rooms, catwalks, industrial equipment left to rust, and everywhere, men with guns moving into defensive positions. They climbed a metal staircase to a second-floor office overlooking the warehouse floor. Vincent Valenti stood at the window, phone pressed to his ear, watching something outside. "Get her over here," he said without turning. The guard shoved Celine forward. She stumbled but caught herself on the window frame. Outside, the warehouse district was lit up like daylight. Floodlights, vehicles, and what looked like an army of men in tactical gear moving into position around the building. "Jesus," Celine whispered. Vincent ended his call and pocketed his phone. "Impressive, isn't it? Lucien mobilized 43 men in under an hour. That's the kind of power I've been trying to dismantle for 15 years. "Let me go," Celine said. "You wanted him here. You got him. I'm useless to you now." "On the contrary, you're more valuable than ever." Vincent gestured to the scene below. "Lucien is about to walk into this building and attempt a rescue that will get most of his men killed, all for you. A woman he's known for what? 3 weeks? 2. Even better, 2 weeks and he's willing to start a war." Vincent finally looked at her. That's not strategy. That's obsession. And obsession makes men predictable. A loudspeaker crackled to life outside. Lucien's voice, amplified and cold. "Vincent, you have 60 seconds to release her unharmed. After that, everyone inside that building dies." Vincent smiled, pressed a button on the wall. His own voice boomed out through speakers. "Hello, Lucien. I'm afraid Ms. Vale isn't ready to leave just yet, but I appreciate the dramatic entrance. Very theatrical. 50 seconds. You're not going to storm this building. You're too smart for that. You know I have 30 guns aimed at every entrance. You know I can kill her before your first man makes it inside. 40 seconds. So here's what's going to happen." Vincent's voice stayed calm, reasonable. "You're going to stand down, send your men home, and then you and I are going to have a civilized conversation about the future of this city. 30 seconds. Lucien, be rational. She's not worth this." The loudspeaker went silent. For a moment, nothing happened. Celine held her breath. Then the warehouse windows exploded inward, not from gunfire, from something else, something that shattered glass and sent smoke billowing through the building. Celine's eyes immediately started burning. Tear gas. Vincent staggered back, cursing. The guard beside Celine dropped to his knees, coughing violently. Through the chaos, Celine heard gunfire, controlled bursts, professional. Lucien's men moving through the smoke like ghosts. Someone grabbed her arm. She tried to fight, but her eyes were streaming tears. She couldn't see, couldn't breathe. Whoever had her was dragging her toward the stairs. Then a voice in her ear, familiar, controlled. "It's me. Don't fight." "Lucien." Celine stopped struggling, let him guide her down the metal stairs, through the smoke, toward what she hoped was safety. Around them, the warehouse had become a war zone. Muzzle flashes in the darkness, men screaming, the metallic smell of blood mixing with tear gas. They made it to the ground floor. Lucien pressed something into her hands, a wet cloth. "Cover your face," he said. She did. The burning in her eyes lessened slightly, enough to see Lucien clearly for the first time. He wore tactical gear, had a gun in one hand. His face was set in an expression she'd never seen before. Not calm, not controlled. Murderous. "Can you walk?" he asked. "I think so." "Stay behind me. Don't stop. Don't look back. He moved forward, weapon raised, clearing their path with precise efficiency. Celine followed, her legs shaking but functional. They passed bodies, some moving, some not. She tried not to look, tried not to think about how many people were dying because of her. They were 10 feet from the exit when Vincent's voice cut through the chaos. "Stop!" Lucien froze, slowly turned. Vincent Valenti stood on the catwalk above them, gun pointed directly at Celine's head. Blood ran from a cut on his temple. His expensive suit was torn, but his hands were steady. "One more step," Vincent said, "and I shoot her." Lucien's weapon came up, aimed at Vincent. Mexican standoff. 2 men, 2 guns. One wrong move. "You don't want to do this," Lucien said quietly. "Don't I? You've destroyed everything I spent tonight, killed my men, ruined my operations. What exactly do I have to lose?" "Your life," Vincent laughed. Actually, laughed. "You think I'm afraid of dying? I'm 72 years old, Lucien. I've had a good run. But you? You're young. You have years ahead of you. How many of those years do you want to spend knowing you got her killed?" Celine's breath caught. She could see the calculation in Lucien's eyes. The terrible math of who was faster, who was more accurate. "Let her go," Lucien said. "Take me instead." "No," Celine whispered. "Shut up." Lucien didn't look at her, kept his eyes on Vincent. "You want to hurt me? Here I am. Unarmed. Yours. Just let her walk out of here." He was lowering his weapon, actually lowering it. Vincent's smile widened. "Now that's interesting. You'd actually do it." "Yes." "Even knowing I'll torture you before I kill you?" "Yes." Celine's heart cracked. This man, this dangerous, violent, terrifying man, was willing to die for her. For someone he'd known for 2 weeks, someone who'd accidentally stumbled into his life. "Don't," she said. "Lucien, don't you dare." "Walk out that door, Celine." "No." "That's an order." "I don't take orders from you." Something flickered in Lucien's expression, almost a smile. "Still arguing with me even now." "Someone has to." Vincent watched this exchange with fascination. "How touching, but I'm afraid neither of you are leaving. See, I've had time to think while watching Lucien tear my organization apart, and I've realized something." He shifted his aim. Now the gun pointed at Lucien. "Killing her would hurt you, but killing you in front of her? That's poetry." Everything happened at once. Lucien dove sideways, reaching for his dropped weapon. Vincent fired. The bullet caught Lucien in the shoulder, spinning him around. He went down hard. Celine screamed. Vincent adjusted his aim for the kill shot, and something inside Celine snapped. She wasn't a fighter, wasn't trained, wasn't brave. But the man who'd given her a camera and seen her shadows and touched her face like she was something precious was bleeding on the concrete floor. Celine grabbed the first thing she could find, a piece of rebar from the debris, and hurled it with every ounce of strength she had. It hit Vincent in the temple with a sickening crack. He staggered. The gun went off, the bullet going wild. Then he toppled over the catwalk railing. The fall was 15 feet. Vincent Valenti hit the concrete floor and didn't move. Silence crashed down. Celine stood there, shaking, staring at what she'd done. Then training, or survival instinct, took over. She ran to Lucien. He was conscious, barely. Blood soaked through his tactical vest from the shoulder wound. His face had gone pale. "That was stupid," he rasped. "You're welcome." "Vincent?" "Dead. I think. I don't know. I don't care." Celine pressed her hands against the wound, trying to stop the bleeding. "We need to get you out of here." "My man!" As if summoned, Tony appeared through the smoke. He took one look at the scene, Lucien bleeding, Vincent's body, Celine covered in blood, and immediately spoke into his radio. "Boss is down. Need medical. Now." More men appeared. Professional, efficient. They had Lucien on a stretcher in seconds. Someone tried to pull Celine away. She refused to let go of his hand. "Ma'am, you need to let us work." "She stays." Lucien's voice was weak but final. "She stays with me." No one argued. They carried him out of the warehouse into the night. Celine climbed into the ambulance with him, still holding his hand, watching his eyes struggle to stay focused. "You came for me," she whispered. "Of course I did." "You almost died." Worth it. Lucienne, I love you. The words came out slurred, fading. Should have said it before. I love you, Celine Vale, accidentally, completely. Then his eyes closed, and the machine started beeping urgently, and the medics were shoving Celine aside to work. She pressed herself against the ambulance wall, Lucien's blood on her hands, and watched them fight to save his life. On. The hospital waiting room existed outside of time. Celine sat in a plastic chair, still wearing her torn clothes, still covered in blood, Lucienne's, Vincent's, maybe some of her own, and stared at the clock on the wall. 3 hours since they'd arrived. No word. Tony had stationed men throughout the hospital, 4 in the waiting room, more in the halls. Someone had brought Celine water and a blanket. She'd accepted both mechanically, but hadn't used either. Around her, Lucienne's people waited, hard men with harder faces. Some injured, some just exhausted, all of them staring at the surgical ward doors like they could will them to open. A nurse had tried to examine Celine, check her for injuries. She'd refused. I'm fine. Ma'am, you have bruises on your wrists and I'm fine. The nurse had given up. Now Celine sat in silence, replaying the warehouse over and over in her mind. The weight of the rebar in her hands, the crack when it hit Vincent's skull, the way he'd fallen. She'd killed a man. The thought should have destroyed her, should have sent her into hysterics or shock or whatever normal people felt after taking a life. Instead, she felt nothing. No, that wasn't true. She felt one thing, relief. Because Vincent was dead and Lucien was alive, and that was all that mattered. What did that make her? The surgical doors opened. Everyone stood at once. Celine's legs shook as she forced herself upright. A doctor emerged. Older man, exhausted. He looked at the crowd of dangerous men and didn't even flinch, probably used to treating gunshot wounds off the books. He's stable, the doctor said. The entire room exhaled. The bullet passed through the shoulder, missed major arteries. He's lost a lot of blood, but he'll recover. The doctor's eyes found Celine. He's asking for you. Everyone looked at her. Celine moved forward on numb legs. The doctor led her through the surgical ward doors, down a hallway, to a private room at the end. Lucien lay in the hospital bed, pale against white sheets. His shoulder was heavily bandaged. IVs ran from both arms, but his eyes were open, watching the door. When Celine entered, something in his expression softened. The doctor left them alone. Celine crossed to the bed, sat carefully in the chair beside it. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. Then Lucien's hand moved, found hers, squeezed weakly. You killed Vincent, he said quietly. Yeah. How do you feel? Celine thought about lying, thought about pretending to be horrified or traumatized or any of the things a normal person would be. Instead, glad I did it before he killed you. Lucien's thumb traced circles on the back of her hand. You saved my life. You came into a warehouse full of armed men for me. I think we're even. No, we're not. He tried to sit up, failed, grimaced. Celine, don't. She leaned forward. Whatever you're about to say, don't. I know what this is. I know what you do. I know the danger. I'm not naive. I was going to say thank you. Oh. And also, he paused. What I said in the ambulance, I meant it. Celine's breath caught. You were delirious. I was honest. She looked at their joined hands, his blood still under her fingernails. This is insane. We barely know each other. I know you throw things with surprising accuracy under pressure. Lucienne, sit. I know you argue with me even when you're terrified. I know you see things other people miss. I know you're brave and reckless and honest to a fault. His eyes were impossibly serious. And I know that somewhere between a wrong text message and a warehouse shootout, I fell in love with you. Celine felt tears building. You can't love me. You don't know what I am. Tell me then. I'm a mess. I'm broke. I dropped out of art school because I couldn't hack it. I work in a cafe because I don't have ambition. I'm ordinary, Lucien. Painfully, desperately ordinary. You killed a man to save me. That doesn't make me special. That makes me, her voice cracked. That makes me someone who's capable of terrible things, just like you. Yes. Lucien squeezed her hand. Exactly like me. Which is why this works. Celine laughed. It came out broken. This doesn't work. This is a disaster. The best things usually are. She looked at him, really looked, past the hospital bed and the IV lines and the bandages, at the man underneath, the one who'd risked everything for her, who'd stormed a warehouse with 40 armed men, who'd offered himself in exchange for her freedom. I don't know how to be in your world, she whispered. Then we'll figure it out together. People will keep trying to kill you. Yes. And now they'll come after me too. I'll protect you. You almost died tonight. But I didn't. His thumb kept moving, gentle circles. Because you were there. Celine felt the last of her resistance crumbling. This was insane, impossible. Every rational part of her brain screamed to walk away, to go back to her cafe and her tiny apartment and her safe, boring life. But when she looked at Lucien, all she saw was the man who'd understood her shadows. If I do this, she said quietly, if I stay, I need you to promise me something. Anything. No more lies, no more protecting me by keeping me in the dark. If there's danger, I need to know. If there's a threat, I need to know. I can handle the truth. What I can't handle is being blindsided again. Lucien's expression went serious. You're right. I should have told you about the risks before the gala. I should have trusted you with the truth instead of trying to control the situation. Will you do it differently? Yes. Promise me. I promise. No more lies. Celine studied his face, looking for the lie beneath the promise, but all she saw was exhaustion and pain and something that looked like hope. Okay, she said finally. Okay? Okay, I'll stay. I'll figure out this insane world of yours, but you have to meet me halfway. You have to let me be part of your life, not just someone you protect from it. Lucien smiled, a real smile, the kind that transformed his whole face. Deal. They sat in silence for a moment. Then Celine leaned forward and kissed him. Gentle, careful of his injuries. His hand came up to cup her face, and for just a moment, the hospital room and the danger and the blood all faded away. When she pulled back, Lucien's eyes were closed, the pain medication pulling him under. Stay, he murmured. I'm not going anywhere. Promise? I promise. He squeezed her hand once more. Then sleep claimed him. Celine sat back in the chair, still holding his hand, and watched him breathe. In and out, steady, alive. Outside the window, New York glittered, indifferent, eternal. And somewhere in the city, people were already moving, claiming Vincent Valenti's territory, circling like sharks around the power vacuum his death had created. The war wasn't over. It was just beginning. But for now, in this quiet hospital room, Celine let herself believe that maybe, just maybe, they had a chance. Even if that chance was built on blood and violence and a photograph sent to the wrong number. But 3 days later, Celine stood in her apartment staring at the bloodstain on her carpet. Adrian's blood. Still there despite her attempts to clean it. A permanent reminder of betrayal and violence. Someone knocked on her door. She opened it to find Tony standing in the hallway. Behind him, 2 men in work uniforms. Boss sent us, Tony said. We're replacing your carpet. Your door, your locks, everything. Celine glanced at the workers. That's not necessary. With respect, ma'am, it is. You can't keep living in a place where someone died. He was right. She'd barely slept the past 3 nights. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw Adrian's body. Heard the gunshots. Fine, she said quietly. Thank you. Tony nodded, started to leave, paused. He's different with you, he said. The boss. More human. Is that good or bad? Depends on the day. Tony almost smiled. But I've worked for Lucien Moretti for 12 years. I've never seen him care about anything except the business. Not until you. I'm not sure that's a compliment. It is, because the business will destroy him eventually. Everyone in this life knows that. But you? Tony met her eyes. You might actually save him. Before Celine could respond, he was gone. The workers entered and began measuring the damaged carpet. Celine moved to her window, looked out at the street below. No black sedan today. Lucien had pulled the obvious security, but she knew they were still there, watching, protecting. Her phone buzzed. How's your morning? Lucien. He'd been texting her constantly from the hospital, usually inane questions, small talk. But she understood what he was really asking. Are you okay? Are you still here? Are you having second thoughts? She typed back, they're replacing my carpet and my door, and possibly my entire life. Too much? Maybe. But thank you. When can I see you? Doctor said you need rest. Doctor isn't the boss of me. Celine smiled despite everything. You got shot 3 days ago. Rest. I've had worse. That's not reassuring. Come visit me tonight, please. I'm going insane in this hospital. She hesitated. Then, okay, 7 p.m. I'll have dinner brought in. Lucien, you're in a hospital. Your point? Of course, he'd find a way to have dinner in a hospital room. Because Lucien Moretti didn't accept limitations. Celine pocketed her phone and watched the workers tear up her blood-stained carpet, watched them remove the evidence of violence from her apartment. But she knew the truth. No amount of new carpet would erase what had happened. No amount of replaced doors would make her safe. She'd crossed a line, killed a man, chosen Lucien's world over her own. There was no going back. The question was whether she could survive going forward. Her phone buzzed again. I love you. 3 words. Simple, devastating. Celine stared at them for a long moment, then typed carefully. I think I love you too, and that terrifies me. Good. We can be terrified together. She almost laughed, because that was exactly what they were doing. 2 broken people choosing each other despite, or maybe because of, the danger. One of the workers called to her. Ma'am, we need you to move some furniture. Celine turned from the window. Time to rebuild. Not just her apartment, everything. Lucien was released from the hospital on a Tuesday morning with 23 stitches, a sling, and strict orders to avoid strenuous activity for 6 weeks. He lasted exactly 4 days before calling an emergency meeting. Celine knew because she was there when Tony delivered the news. They were in Lucien's penthouse. She'd been staying there since her apartment renovation finished, though neither of them had explicitly discussed whether it was temporary or permanent. Some things went unspoken in the space between them. Vincent's nephews are making moves, Tony said, spreading photographs across the dining table. Marco Valenti claimed his uncle's seat at the family table. He's consolidating power, reaching out to Vincent's old allies. Lucien studied the photos with his good hand. His injured shoulder was still heavily bandaged beneath his shirt. Celine could see the tension in his jaw, the pain he refused to acknowledge. How many soldiers does Marco have? 60. Maybe 70. Most of Vincent's people scattered after the warehouse, but Marco's been pulling them back together, promising revenge. Revenge for what? Celine asked from her position near the windows. Vincent tried to kill Lucien first. Tony glanced at her, still not quite comfortable with her presence at these discussions. In their eyes, you killed the patriarch. That demands a response. I didn't. Celine stopped. Because she had. She'd thrown that rebar, watched Vincent fall. He was going to shoot Lucien. Doesn't matter. Blood requires blood in this world. Lucien's voice cut through. She's under my protection. Anyone who touches her answers to me. Marco knows that, which is why he's being smart about this, building strength before making a move. How long do we have? Tony hesitated. Days. Maybe a week. He's moving fast. Lucien nodded slowly, then winced. The movement pulled at his shoulder. Celine noticed even if he tried to hide it. Set up a meeting, Lucien said. Neutral ground. I want to talk to Marco before this becomes a war. Boss, with respect, talking didn't work with Vincent. Vincent was old, bitter. He had nothing to lose. Lucien's eyes were hard. Marco's young. He has a whole life ahead of him. Maybe he's smart enough not to throw it away. Tony didn't look convinced, but he nodded. I'll reach out through intermediaries. After he left, Celine crossed to Lucien, placed her hand on his good shoulder. You need to rest. I need to end this before more people die. You almost died a week ago. Exactly. Lucien turned to face her, which is why I need to handle this now, while I'm still weak, while Marco thinks he has the advantage. Celine's stomach dropped. You're using yourself as bait. I'm using strategy. That's the same thing. Not quite. Lucian's hand came up to touch her face. The gesture had become familiar between them, his thumb tracing her cheekbone. If Marco sees me injured, vulnerable, he might make a mistake, get overconfident. That's when we strike. We? My people. While you do what? Sit there and bleed? If necessary. Celine pulled away from his touch. This is insane. You need time to heal, to recover, not to walk into another potential ambush. There's no time. Every day we wait, Marco gets stronger, recruits more soldiers, builds more alliances. Lucian's voice was patient but firm. I've been doing this for 15 years, Celine. I know how these situations play out. And how do they usually end? He didn't answer, which was answer enough. The meeting was set for Friday night. Neutral ground meant a restaurant in Little Italy, family-owned, connected to neither the Morettis nor the Valentis. The kind of place where business was conducted over wine and pasta while armed men waited in the shadows. Lucien spent the days preparing, conference calls with his lawyers, meetings with his captains, moving money through offshore accounts, making arrangements. Celine watched him work and felt dread building in her chest. Thursday afternoon, she found him in his office staring at paperwork. "What's that?" she asked. He looked up. Something in his expression was careful, guarded. "Legal documents." "What kind?" "The kind that transfer assets in case something happens to me." Celine's blood went cold. "You're writing a will." "I'm updating existing documents." "Same thing." She moved closer. "You think you're going to die tomorrow?" "I think it's possible." "Then don't go." "I have to." "Why?" The word came out sharper than she intended. "Why do you have to walk into a situation you think might kill you?" Lucian set down his pen, looked at her with tired eyes. "Because if I don't, Marco will interpret it as weakness. He'll push harder, attack my operations, my people, and eventually he'll come after you. So this is about protecting me. This is about protecting everyone." He stood, moved around the desk. "You asked me not to lie to you, not to hide the danger, so I'm telling you the truth. Tomorrow is dangerous. Marco might honor the meeting, or he might try to kill me. I don't know which." "And you're going anyway?" "Yes." Celine felt tears building. She refused to let them fall. "I hate this. I hate your world. I hate that people solve problems with bullets instead of conversations." "I know. I hate that you're asking me to just accept this." "I'm not asking you to accept it." Lucian pulled her closer with his good arm. "I'm asking you to trust me, to believe I know what I'm doing. And if you're wrong, then Tony has instructions, assets, everything you need to disappear, new identity, new city, new life." Celine pushed away from him. "You think I want that? You think I want to run away if you die?" "I think I want you alive." "Well, I want the same thing for you," her voice cracked. "So maybe instead of walking into this meeting like a sacrifice, you find another way. A smarter way. A way that doesn't involve you bleeding out in some restaurant." Lucien's expression softened. "There is no other way. Not with Marco. He needs to see me face to face. Needs to understand that I'm not afraid of him. Even if you should be? Especially then." They stood in silence. Outside the windows, the city moved on, indifferent, uncaring. Finally, Celine said, "I'm coming with you." "Absolutely not." "You don't get to decide that." "Celine, you said no more lies, no more protecting me by keeping me in the dark, so don't shut me out now." She met his eyes. "If you're walking into danger, I'm walking in with you. It's too risky. Everything about this is risky." She moved closer. "But I killed Vincent Valenti. Marco knows that, which means I'm already part of this whether you like it or not." Lucien's jaw tightened. She could see him running calculations, weighing options. "If you come," he said finally, "you follow my lead. You stay close. And if things go wrong, you run. You don't try to save me. You don't play hero. You run, and you don't look back. Understood?" Celine wanted to argue, wanted to tell him she'd never leave him, but she also understood that this was the only way he'd agree. "Understood," she lied. Lucian studied her face, looking for the deception. She kept her expression neutral. He didn't believe her. She could tell. but he also knew arguing would be pointless. Fine, he said quietly, but you wear a vest, and you stay behind Tony the entire time. Deal. They sealed it with a kiss, his hand tangled in her hair, her fingers careful around his injured shoulder, and Celine tried not to think about the fact that this might be the last time. Friday evening arrived too fast. Celine dressed carefully. Dark jeans, black shirt, flat shoes in case she needed to run. The bulletproof vest Tony provided felt heavy and wrong against her ribs, but she wore it anyway. Lucien emerged from his bedroom in a dark suit, one sleeve tailored to accommodate his sling. He looked pale, tired, but determined. Last chance to change your mind, he said. Not happening. He almost smiled. Stubborn. You love it. I do. The convoy was 6 vehicles. Lucien and Celine rode in the center SUV with Tony and 2 other guards. The restaurant was only 15 minutes away, but the drive felt eternal. Celine's hands wouldn't stop shaking. Lucien noticed, took her hand in his. Breathe. I'm breathing. You're hyperventilating. He was right. Her chest felt tight. Her vision kept blurring at the edges. What if this goes wrong? She whispered. Then we handle it. How? The same way we've handled everything else, together. The convoy pulled up outside the restaurant. A small place. Brick facade. Red awning. Warm light spilling through the windows. It looked so normal, so innocent. Tony spoke into his radio. Positions. Armed men moved through the shadows, taking up posts, covering exits. Professional, efficient. Then Tony opened the door. It's time. Lucien stepped out first. Celine followed. The evening air was cool against her face. She could hear traffic, distant sirens, the ordinary sounds of the city. Inside the restaurant, every table was empty except one. Marco Valenti sat at the back. He was younger than Celine expected, mid-30s, handsome in a sharp, predatory way. 3 men stood behind him, armed, watching. Lucien moved toward the table with controlled steps. Celine stayed close. Tony flanked her other side. They stopped 6 feet away. Marco stood slowly. His eyes traveled over Lucien's sling, the carefully hidden weakness. Then his gaze shifted to Celine. So this is her, the photographer who killed my uncle. Celine's throat went dry, but she forced herself to meet his eyes. He was going to shoot Lucien. My uncle was defending himself against an invasion. Your uncle kidnapped me after you aligned yourself with the man who's been destroying our family for 15 years. Marco's smile was cold. You chose a side. Actions have consequences. Enough! Lucien's voice cut through. We're not here to debate history. We're here to discuss the future. The future. Marco returned to his seat, gestured for them to sit opposite him. Yes, let's discuss that. Lucien sat. Celine took the chair beside him. Tony remained standing. A clear message. Marco poured wine from a bottle on the table, offered glasses. Lucien declined. Celine did the same. Wise, Marco said. Never drink when discussing terms. He took a sip of his own glass. So, what are you proposing? Peace, Lucien said simply. Your uncle's war dies with him. We maintain current territorial divisions. No retaliation, no revenge. In exchange for, I don't pursue charges against anyone involved in the kidnapping. I don't retaliate for the attempt on my life at the gala. We call it even. Marco considered this. Generous offer. Suspiciously generous. I'm tired of bloodshed. No, you're injured, weakened. You know another war right now would cost you. Marco leaned forward. But here's the problem, Lucien. My uncle's people expect me to avenge him. If I accept your peace offer, I look weak. They'll question my leadership. Then make them understand the strategic value of ending this now. Or, Marco's smile widened, or I kill you tonight, right here. Take over your territories while your organization is in chaos. Become the man who finally took down Lucien Moretti. The temperature in the room dropped. Tony's hand moved toward his weapon. Marco's men did the same. Celine's heart hammered against the bulletproof vest. Lucien didn't move. didn't flinch. You could try, but you'd die 30 seconds later when my men storm this building, and your family would still lose the war that follows. Maybe, or maybe your people would fracture without you. Maybe some of them would join me rather than fight a losing battle. You're gambling. So are you. The two men stared at each other across the table. Celine could feel the violence building, the terrible moment before everything exploded. Then Lucien did something unexpected. He laughed. Not fake, not forced. A genuine sound of amusement. What's funny? Marco demanded. You, me, this entire situation. Lucien shook his head. We're both sitting here pretending we have more power than we do. Both bluffing, both hoping the other blinks first. I'm not bluffing. Neither am I. Which means we have a choice. Lucien's expression went serious. We can kill each other tonight and let our families bleed for the next decade. Or we can be smarter than our predecessors. End this cycle. Marco's finger traced the rim of his wine glass. My uncle would call that weakness. Your uncle is dead. You're not. Lucien leaned forward despite the pain it caused his shoulder. You're young. You have time to build something better than a war. Don't throw it away for revenge. He makes a point. The voice came from behind Marco, one of his men, older, scarred. Vincent's war cost us money, territory, good people. Maybe it's time for something different. Marco's jaw tightened. You're supposed to support me. I am supporting you by telling you the truth. The older man stepped forward. Peace isn't weakness, it's strategy. Let the Morettis lick their wounds. Let us rebuild. Then if war comes later, we're stronger for it. Marco looked at his advisor, then back at Lucien. The calculation was visible on his face. Finally, he spoke. I want Brooklyn. The dock specifically. In exchange for peace. No. Lucien's voice was flat. Brooklyn stays mine. Then no deal. Marco. You asked for peace. I'm telling you the price. Marco's eyes were hard. Brooklyn's docks are worth millions. Give them to me and I can sell my people on this peace. Tell them it's a victory. Otherwise they'll demand blood. Celine could see Lucien's mind working. Brooklyn's docks were valuable. Critical infrastructure. Losing them would hurt. But losing this peace would cost lives. Half, Lucien said finally. You get half the docking operations. We split the revenue, but control stays mixed. That way neither of us can betray the other without losing money. Marco considered. 60-40 split in my favor. 55-45. Done. They shook hands across the table. The agreement sealed with a grip that looked casual but was anything but. Marco stood. I'll have my lawyers draw up the contracts. We'll make this official. Agreed. And Moretti? Marco's eyes shifted to Celine. Keep your woman close. There are people in my family who won't accept this peace, who will see her as an easy target for revenge. Let them try. Marco smiled. I almost hope they do. I'd enjoy watching you destroy them. Then he was leaving, his men following, the restaurant emptying. Celine released a breath she'd been holding for what felt like hours. Is it over? She asked quietly. For now, Lucien said. He looked exhausted, pale, like the meeting had cost him every ounce of strength he had. Tony leaned close. Boss, we should go. Being in one place this long. He never finished the sentence. The restaurant windows exploded inward. Gunfire erupted from the street. Not professional, not controlled, wild, desperate. Celine hit the floor as Tony threw himself over Lucien. Glass rained down. Bullets punched through walls. Someone was screaming. Maybe her. She couldn't tell. Then Lucien's voice. Get her out! Now! Tony grabbed Celine's arm, hauled her toward the kitchen. She tried to fight, tried to stay with Lucien, but Tony was stronger. He'll be fine! Move! They crashed through the kitchen doors. More gunfire behind them. The cook was gone. Smart man. The back exit stood open. Tony shoved Celine through it into an alley. The convoy SUVs were already moving, blocking the alley, creating cover. Someone grabbed Celine, pulled her toward a vehicle. She looked back at the restaurant, saw Lucien being dragged out by his own guards, blood on his shirt. She couldn't tell if it was his or someone else's. Then she was being thrown into an SUV. The door slammed. The vehicle peeled out with enough force to slam her against the seat. "Lucien!" she shouted. "Where's Lucien?" "Different vehicle," the driver said. "Safer that way." They tore through Brooklyn streets, running red lights, weaving through traffic. Behind them, sirens wailed. Celine's phone rang. She answered with shaking hands. Lucien's voice. "Are you hurt?" "No. You?" Shoulder reopened. Nothing critical. His breathing was labored, pained. Marco's cousin, the shooting, he went rogue. Didn't accept the peace. "Is he dead?" "My people got him." Lucien coughed. "But this isn't over. If one of Marco's family broke ranks, others might too." "Where are we going?" "Separate locations. Too dangerous to be together right now. You're headed to a safe house in Queens. I'll send Tony to guard you." "No." Celine's voice was steel. "We stay together." "Celine, no more separating. No more protecting me by pushing me away. We're in this together. Remember?" Silence on the line, then, "You're the most stubborn woman I've ever met." "I know. Where are you?" A pause. "Change of plans," Lucien said to someone else. Then to her, "Penthouse. We're going to the penthouse. I'll meet you there. Celine, I love you, and I'm not letting you bleed alone." She hung up before he could argue. The driver glanced at her in the rearview mirror. "Ma'am, my orders are to take you to Queens." "New orders. Penthouse. Now." "I need clearance, Celine leaned forward, put every ounce of authority she could muster into her voice. "I just watched someone try to kill the man I love for the second time in 2 weeks. I've killed a man. I've been kidnapped and shot at and pulled into a world I barely understand. So when I tell you to drive me to the penthouse, you drive me to the fucking penthouse. Understood?" The driver's eyes widened, then he nodded. "Yes, ma'am." He changed course. 15 minutes later, they pulled up to Lucien's building. Celine was out of the SUV before it fully stopped. She took the elevator up 50 floors with her heart in her throat. The penthouse doors opened. Blood on the marble floor. Medical supplies scattered across the dining table. Lucien sitting shirtless while someone stitched his reopened shoulder wound. His eyes found hers. Relief and frustration warred in his expression. "You're supposed to be in Queens." "Plans changed." Celine crossed to him, took his good hand. "How bad?" 6 new stitches, nothing permanent. The medic working on his shoulder looked up. "He needs to stop getting shot. This keeps happening. He'll lose mobility in this arm." "Noted," Lucien said dryly. Celine watched them work, watched the needle pierce his skin, watched him not even flinch. This was his life. Violence and blood and stitches in dining rooms. And somehow, impossibly, it was hers now too. When the medic finished and left, Celine helped Lucien into a fresh shirt. Her hands were gentle around his shoulder. "This has to stop," she said quietly. "I know. I can't keep watching you almost die." "I know." "So what do we do?" Lucien looked at her, really looked. And something in his expression shifted, hardened. "We end it," he said, "completely. Tomorrow, I'm calling a meeting of all the families, every major player in New York. And I'm proposing a treaty, real peace, enforced by mutual interest. They'll never agree. They will, because I'm going to offer them something they can't refuse." He stood slowly, moved to the windows overlooking the city. "Control, not of territory, of the future. A council that settles disputes without bloodshed, that builds profit through cooperation instead of war." Celine joined him at the window. "And if they say no? Then I burn it all down." His voice was quiet but absolute. "Every operation, every alliance, every piece of the empire I've built, I walk away and let them destroy each other." "You'd really do that?" Lucien turned to face her, cupped her face with his good hand. "For you? I'd do anything." "Even give up everything you've built?" "It's not everything, not anymore." His thumb traced her cheek. "You are." Celine felt tears building. "That's a lot of pressure." "I know, I'm sorry." "Don't be." She leaned into his touch. "Just don't die before this meeting happens." "I'll do my best." They stood at the window as the sun set over New York. The city lit up floor by floor, building by building, a kingdom of light and shadow. Tomorrow would bring another fight, another risk. Another chance for everything to fall apart. But tonight, they had this: each other, alive, together. And for now, that was enough. The meeting was set for Sunday. Neutral ground again. A hotel conference room in Midtown. Every family invited, every player given a voice. Lucien spent Saturday preparing his proposal. Celine watched him work, saw the exhaustion in his eyes, the pain he kept hidden, the determination that wouldn't let him stop. Saturday night, she found him on the balcony, same place they'd stood before the gala, before everything went to hell. "Can't sleep?" she asked. "Too much to think about." Celine joined him at the railing. The city sprawled beneath them, endless, hungry. "What if they don't accept the treaty?" she asked. "Then we fight. And if we lose, we won't." "How can you be sure?" Lucien looked at her. "Because I have something worth fighting for now. That changes everything." They stood in silence. Then Celine said, "I'm scared." "Me too." "Really?" Terrified. He pulled her close with his good arm. "But I learned something these past few weeks. Being scared doesn't mean being weak. It means you have something to lose. And you have a lot to lose. Just you. Everything else is negotiable." Celine buried her face against his chest, listened to his heartbeat, steady, strong, alive. "Promise me something," she whispered. "Anything. No matter what happens tomorrow, we don't let them break us. We stay together. We stay whole." Lucien's arms tightened around her. "I promise." They stayed on the balcony until the city lights blurred into dawn, until Saturday became Sunday, until there was no more time left to prepare. The meeting was in 6 hours, and everything they'd fought for hung in the balance. The hotel conference room was designed for corporate meetings and wedding receptions, not peace treaties between crime families. But there they were, 15 men around a long table, each representing a different faction of New York's underground. Some Lucien had worked with for years, some he'd only heard about through intermediaries. All of them dangerous, all of them calculating the exact moment to strike if this went wrong. Celine stood against the back wall with Tony and 3 other guards. She'd argued about attending. Lucien had forbidden it. She'd come anyway. By now, he'd stopped being surprised. Marco Valenti sat 4 seats down from Lucien. His face was carefully neutral, but Celine could see the tension in his shoulders. The cousin who'd opened fire at the restaurant had been his blood. Someone Marco should have controlled. The failed attack made him look weak in front of the other families. Lucien stood at the head of the table. His injured shoulder was hidden beneath a perfectly tailored suit, but Celine knew the pain was there, saw it in the careful way he moved, the tightness around his eyes. "Thank you for coming," Lucien began. His voice was calm, authoritative. "I know some of you took considerable risk being here. I appreciate it." "Cut the pleasantries," said an older man Celine didn't recognize. Heavy accent, scarred hands. "You called this meeting. We came. Now tell us why we shouldn't just kill you and divide your territory." A few men nodded. Others stayed silent, watching. Lucien didn't flinch. "Because killing me would start a war that would destroy half this city. My people are loyal, well-armed, and they have instructions to burn everything to the ground if I die." "Mutually assured destruction," Marco said quietly. "That's your opening argument?" "No, that's just reality." Lucien placed both hands on the table. "My opening argument is this. We're all dying. Not today, not tomorrow, but slowly. Every year we lose more territory to federal investigations, more money to legal operations that undercut our prices, more power to politicians who are harder to buy than they used to be. So," another man challenged, "we adapt. We always have." "For how long?" Lucien's eyes swept the room. "How many of you have lost soldiers this year? Lost operations? How many are spending more on lawyers than on expansion? We're fighting each other while the world changes around us. And eventually, we'll fight ourselves into irrelevance." The room fell silent. Celine watched the faces, some dismissive, some thoughtful, all of them listening. "I'm proposing something different," Lucien continued. "A council, representatives from each family. We settle territorial disputes through negotiation instead of bloodshed. We coordinate on large operations to maximize profit. We present a united front against law enforcement and political pressure. You want us to work together, Marco said. It wasn't a question, more like testing the idea, seeing how it sounded out loud. I want us to survive. Together, we control billions in revenue. We employ thousands. We have influence that reaches every level of this city, but divided, we're vulnerable, easy targets. An older woman at the far end of the table spoke for the first time. Her voice was quiet but carried weight. And who leads this council? You? No one leads. We vote. Majority rules. Every family gets equal voice regardless of size. That's idealistic bullshit, someone muttered. Maybe, but it's better than the alternative. Lucian's voice went hard, which is watching federal prosecutors pick us off one by one, watching our children go to prison or get killed in stupid territorial wars, watching everything we built turn to dust because we were too proud to cooperate. The scarred man who'd spoken earlier leaned forward. You're asking us to trust each other. In this business, trust gets you killed. I'm asking you to choose survival over pride. That's different. Is it? Marco's eyes were sharp. Because from where I'm sitting, this sounds like a power grab. Create a council, stack it with allies, control the city through bureaucracy instead of force. Lucian met his gaze. If I wanted control, I'd have killed Vincent when he was weak years ago, taken his territory, crushed your family before you had a chance to rebuild. But I didn't. Because expansion through violence is temporary. Real power comes from stability. Pretty speech, the older woman said. But speeches don't mean much when bullets start flying. Then let's talk specifics. Lucien pulled out a folder, distributed copies around the table. Revenue projections for the next 5 years under the current model versus coordinated operations. Territory divisions that eliminate overlap and conflict. Legal frameworks that protect all of us instead of just individual families. It's all here. Men opened the folders, started reading. Celine could see the wheels turning, the calculations being made. One of the younger attendees spoke up. This level of coordination would require sharing intelligence, trade secrets, operational details. You really think anyone here would agree to that? I think everyone here is smart enough to see the numbers, to understand that 5 years from now, we're either working together or we're extinct. And if someone breaks the agreement, Marco asked, if one family decides to go rogue? The council votes on consequences. Could be financial penalties. Could be territorial seizure. Could be... Lucian paused. Removal from the council entirely, left to fend for themselves against law enforcement and rivals. Exile, the scarred man said. You're talking about exile. I'm talking about accountability. The room erupted into overlapping conversations, arguments, debates. Celine watched Lucien stand there calmly while chaos swirled around him. This was his element, not violence, strategy, the long game. After 5 minutes, the older woman held up her hand. The room quieted. I have a question, she said. What happens to existing conflicts? Do we just forget years of bloodshed? Pretend the past didn't happen? Lucien's expression went somber. No, we acknowledge it, face it. Then we choose to move forward anyway. Because holding on to old wars will destroy us faster than any federal investigation. Easy to say when you're the one proposing the treaty, is it? Lucien's voice was quiet but firm. 3 weeks ago, the Valenti family kidnapped someone important to me. Tried to use her as leverage. When I rescued her, I killed Vincent Valenti and a dozen of his men. That's not ancient history. That's recent wounds, still bleeding. Every eye in the room turned to Marco. He sat very still, face carefully blank. And yet, Lucien continued, Marco and I negotiated a territorial agreement 2 days ago. Split the Brooklyn docks despite our families having every reason to keep killing each other. Because we both understood something. Revenge is expensive. Peace is profitable. Until it isn't, someone muttered. Then we renegotiate. Adapt. But we do it at a table instead of with guns. Lucien looked around the room. I'm not saying this is easy. I'm not saying it's perfect. But I am saying it's our best chance. Silence fell. The scarred man broke it. I want guarantees, legal protection, something that prevents you from using this council to eliminate rivals under the guise of justice. Fair. We'll draft bylaws, require unanimous votes for anything involving violence, create checks and balances. I want an independent mediator, the older woman added. Someone not affiliated with any family, Someone who can call bullshit when they see it. Agreed. One by one, the men around the table started nodding, asking questions, making demands, and slowly, impossibly, a framework began to take shape. 3 hours later, they had a draft agreement. Not perfect, not complete, but a start. As the meeting ended and men filed out, Marco approached Lucienne. They stood face to face, two men who should have been enemies. "This better work," Marco said quietly. "It will, if we both commit to it. And if someone in my family tries something, another cousin who doesn't accept the peace, then you handle it before I have to." Lucian's voice was steel wrapped in velvet. That's what leadership means, making the hard choices. Marco studied him for a long moment, then extended his hand. "To hard choices." Lucien shook it. "To survival." After everyone left, Celine crossed to Lucien. He looked exhausted, pale, like the meeting had drained every ounce of energy he had left. "You did it," she said softly. "We'll see. Talk is easy. Implementation is hard." But they listened. They agreed. For now, Lucien moved toward the windows. Outside, the city glittered in afternoon sunlight. "In 6 months, someone will test the treaty. Try to grab territory or make a move. That's when we'll find out if this actually works." Celine joined him at the window. "And if it doesn't, then I walk away. Like I said," he looked at her, "take you somewhere far from this. Start over." "You'd really leave all this?" Without hesitation. She wanted to believe him, wanted to think he'd actually choose her over the empire he'd built. But she also knew men like Lucien didn't walk away from power easily. "What are you thinking?" he asked. "That I'm in love with a man I barely understand? That I've killed someone? That my entire life changed because of one wrong text message?" Celine laughed, but it came out shaky. "And that somehow, impossibly, I don't regret any of it." Lucien pulled her close with his good arm. "I regret parts of it. I regret that you got hurt, that you were kidnapped and terrorized and pulled into violence you never asked for. But you don't regret meeting me. Never." They stood at the window as the sun moved across the sky. Tony waited by the door, patient, professional, giving them this moment. Finally, Lucien spoke. "I need to ask you something." Celine's heart jumped. "Okay. This life, my life, it's never going to be completely safe. Even with the treaty, even with peace, there will always be risks, always be people who want to hurt me through you." "I know." "And you're okay with that?" Celine pulled back to look at his face. Really look. Past the expensive suit and the powerful reputation and the carefully maintained control. At the man underneath, the one who'd sat in her cafe pretending to be normal, who'd understood her shadows, who'd burned the city down to save her. "I'm not okay with it," she said honestly. "I hate the danger. I hate watching you almost die. I hate that I had to kill someone to protect you." "Then why stay?" "Because leaving would be worse." She touched his face, traced the line of his jaw. "Because when I'm with you, I feel alive in a way I never have before. Even when I'm terrified, even when everything is falling apart, you see me, the real me. Not the waitress or the failed art student or the ordinary girl with a camera. You see my shadows, and you don't look away." Lucian's eyes were impossibly bright. "You're not ordinary." "Maybe not anymore." He kissed her, slow, deep, like memorizing the moment. When he pulled back, his expression was serious. "Move in with me, officially, not just staying over. Make the penthouse ours." Celine's breath caught. "That's a big step." "I know, but I'm tired of pretending this is temporary, tired of half measures." His hand tightened on her waist. "I want you in my life, completely, permanently." "What if it doesn't work? What if we're too different, Aaron? Then we figure it out, together." He smiled slightly. "We've survived kidnapping and shootings and peace negotiations. I think we can handle cohabitation." Celine laughed despite everything. "You make it sound so romantic." "I'm not good at romantic. I'm good at honest." "Yeah, you are." She took a breath. "Okay. Okay. Okay. I'll move in. I'll make the penthouse ours. I'll figure out how to exist in your terrifying world." She met his eyes. but you have to promise me something. Anything. No more secrets. No more protecting me by hiding information. If there's danger, I need to know. If there's a problem, we solve it together. Equal partners. Not you making decisions for me. Lucien was quiet for a moment. Then, that's going to be hard for me. My instinct is to protect you, to shield you from the worst parts of this life. I know, but I need you to try anyway. I will, I promise. He kissed her forehead. Equal partners. They sealed it with another kiss. Longer this time. Tony eventually cleared his throat from across the room. Boss, we should go. Being in one location this long makes me nervous. Lucien nodded. Right. Let's go home. Home. The word felt significant, final. They rode the elevator down in comfortable silence. Outside, the convoy waited, professional, protective. As they drove through Manhattan traffic, Celine watched the city pass by. She thought about the girl she'd been 3 weeks ago. Working in a cafe, taking photographs no one saw, dating a man who didn't respect her, living a small, safe, unremarkable life. That girl was gone. In her place was someone who'd killed to protect the man she loved, who'd negotiated with crime lords, who'd chosen danger over safety because the alternative felt like dying slowly. She wasn't sure if that made her brave or crazy. Probably both. 2 months later, Celine stood in a gallery in Chelsea, watching strangers examine her photographs. Not the cafe work, not the accidental shots on her phone. Real art. The shadows she'd spent years capturing, framed, mounted, priced at numbers that made her dizzy. The gallery owner, a sharp woman named Helena, who'd somehow found Celine's Instagram, had called 2 weeks ago with an offer, a solo show, prime location, opening night attended by collectors and critics and people who actually mattered in the art world. Celine had said yes before fully processing what it meant. Now she stood in the corner wearing a black dress Lucien had bought her, watching her shadows come to life on white walls. Stop hiding in the corner, Lucien said, appearing at her elbow with 2 glasses of champagne. This is your night. I'm not hiding, I'm observing. You're panicking. Also that. Celine took the champagne, didn't drink it. What if they hate it? They don't. 3 pieces sold in the first hour. What? Lucien gestured subtly toward a photograph of a Brooklyn alley, shadow and light fighting for dominance. That one. And the bridge series. Someone bought both. Celine's heart jumped. Who? Does it matter? Yes, I want to know who's crazy enough to spend money on my work. Art collectors. People with taste. Lucien's smile was slight. And me. I bought the bridge series. You can't buy your girlfriend's art. That's cheating. I can do whatever I want. And they're beautiful. I want them in the penthouse. Celine felt tears building. She blinked them back. You're biased. Absolutely. Doesn't make me wrong. Helena appeared, trailing a couple in their 50s. Expensive clothes, serious expressions. The kind of people who attended gallery openings as a lifestyle. Celine, darling, this is Mr. and Mrs. Chen. They have questions about your process. The next hour blurred into a series of conversations, answering questions about composition and lighting and what inspired her to capture darkness instead of light. Some people got it, some didn't. All of them were interested. By the time the opening ended, 7 pieces had sold. Helena was already talking about a follow-up show, about magazine features, about opportunities Celine had stopped dreaming about years ago. They left the gallery around midnight. The convoy was waiting, Tony in the lead car, other guards flanking. It should have felt suffocating. The constant security, the awareness of danger. Instead, it felt normal. That probably said something disturbing about how much Celine had changed. In the SUV, Lucien took her hand. You were incredible tonight. I was terrified. Same thing. Celine laughed. Is it always going to be like this? Me being scared and you pretending it's fine? Probably, but you'll get used to it. Will I? Lucien's expression went serious. You've already gotten used to so much. Gallery openings should be easy compared to everything else. He was right. Compared to warehouses and gunfire and peace negotiations with mob bosses, talking about her art was nothing. When did my life get so weird? She asked quietly. About 2 months ago. When you sent a photo to the wrong number. Best mistake I ever made. Agreed. They drove through the city in comfortable silence. Celine watched the lights blur past, thought about everything that had changed, everything she'd survived. The penthouse felt like home now. Her photographs on the walls, her camera equipment in the spare bedroom Lucien had converted into a studio. Her clothes in the closet next to his expensive suits. They'd settled into a rhythm. Mornings, she worked on her photography. Afternoons, she sometimes helped at the cafe. Marco had insisted on keeping her employed despite everything, claiming it was good for her to stay grounded. Evenings belonged to Lucien. Dinners, conversations, the quiet intimacy of two broken people learning to be whole together. The treaty was holding. Barely. There'd been 2 violations in the past 8 weeks, both handled through the council instead of violence. The families were learning, adapting. It wasn't perfect, but it was working. As they entered the penthouse, Celine kicked off her shoes and collapsed onto the couch. Her feet ached, her face hurt from smiling. But underneath the exhaustion was satisfaction. She'd done it, actually succeeded at something for the first time in years. Lucien joined her on the couch. His shoulder had healed, the sling was gone, but he still moved carefully sometimes, reminded of the violence that had brought them together. "Thank you," Celine said quietly. "For what?" "For the gallery connection, for buying my work, for—" She gestured vaguely. "All of it. I didn't do anything. Helena found you on her own. The collectors bought your work because it's good. This is all you. You gave me the camera, introduced me to your world, showed me that I could be more than just—" "You were always more." Lucien's voice was firm. "I just helped you see it." Celine turned to look at him. This man who'd changed everything, who'd pulled her out of her small life and into something terrifying and beautiful and utterly insane. "I love you," she said. Simple. Direct. "I love you too." He pulled her closer. "Even though you're stubborn and reckless and constantly arguing with me. Especially because of that. Especially because of that." They sat in the quiet penthouse. Outside, New York hummed with life. Endless. Hungry. Indifferent to individual stories. But inside, 2 people who'd found each other by accident were building something intentional. Something real. And that was enough. Whoops. 1 year later. Celine stood in the kitchen of the penthouse, burning pasta. Again. Lucien appeared in the doorway, already smiling. "Do I need to call the fire department?" "It's not that bad." The smoke alarm disagrees. Celine waved a towel at the detector until it stopped screaming. "I was trying to surprise you with dinner. It seemed romantic." "It is romantic. Dangerously so." Lucien crossed to the stove, turned off the burner, examined the charred remains of what might have once been linguine. "How did you manage to burn pasta? You literally just boil water." "I got distracted." "By what?" Celine held up her camera. The light coming through the windows. It was perfect. I had to capture it. Lucien shook his head, but he was smiling. "You're impossible." "You love it." "I do." They ordered takeout instead. Sat on the balcony overlooking the city. Same place they'd stood before the gala. Before everything changed. Except now, everything was different. The treaty had survived its first year, stronger than anyone expected. The council met monthly. Disputes were settled. Profits were up. Federal investigations had shifted focus to smaller, unaffiliated operations. It wasn't peace. Not really. But it was something close. Celine's photography career had taken off in ways she'd never imagined. 3 more gallery shows. Features in art magazines. Commercial work that actually paid well. She'd quit the cafe 6 months ago. Marco had thrown her a goodbye party. Half the neighborhood showed up. She still took pictures of shadows. Still found beauty in darkness. But now she also captured light. The balance felt right. "I need to tell you something," Lucien said, setting down his wine glass. Celine's stomach tightened. Those words never led anywhere good. "Okay." Marco's stepping down from the council. His family's pushing him out. They think he's too soft, too willing to compromise. What does that mean for the treaty? Depends on who replaces him. Could be someone who honors the agreements, could be someone who wants to restart the war. Lucien's expression was carefully neutral. "We'll know in a few weeks." Celine processed this. A year ago, news like this would have terrified her. Now it just felt like part of the landscape. Danger was always there, always waiting. They'd learned to live with it. "What's the plan?" she asked. "Same as always. Stay prepared, hope for the best, plan for the worst." Very inspirational. "I'm a realist, not a motivational speaker." They sat in silence. Then Celine said, "Whatever happens, we handle it together, right?" "Right. No more secrets. No more protecting me by hiding information. I've kept that promise, haven't I?" He had. Every threat, every complication, every dangerous development. Lucian told her everything now, trusted her with the truth even when it scared both of them. "Yeah," Celine said. "You have." "Then trust me when I say we'll survive whatever comes next. We always do." He was right. They'd survived kidnapping, shootings, peace negotiations, the slow, difficult work of building a life together despite coming from completely different worlds. What was one more challenge? Lucian stood, extended his hand. "Dance with me." "There's no music." "So?" Celine took his hand, let him pull her to her feet. They moved slowly on the balcony. No rhythm, no grace, just two people swaying together in the darkness. "This is ridiculous," Celine said against his chest. "Most good things are." "Is that your philosophy on life?" "It's my philosophy on us." Celine smiled, pressed closer, felt his heartbeat against her cheek. Steady, strong, alive. "I'm glad I sent that photo to the wrong number," she whispered. "Best accident that ever happened to me. Even with all the chaos that followed, especially because of it." They danced until the city lights blurred, until time stopped meaning anything, until there was nothing but this moment, this man, this impossible life they'd built from wreckage and wrong numbers. Somewhere in the distance, sirens wailed, the city breathed, danger circled, but up here, 50 floors above it all, Celine felt safe. Not because the world was safe. It wasn't. It never would be. But because she'd found someone who saw her shadows and loved them anyway. Someone who'd fight for her, protect her, stand beside her when everything fell apart. And in the end, that was all anyone really needed. One person who stayed when staying was hard. One person who chose you again and again, despite the cost. Lucian pulled back slightly, looked at her with eyes that still held secrets but also absolute certainty. "Marry me," he said. Celine's breath caught. "What?" "Marry me. Make this permanent. Choose me every day for the rest of our lives." "That's not very romantic." "I'm not good at romantic, remember?" "You're getting better." Celine's heart hammered against her ribs. "But this is crazy. We've only been together a year. We've survived more in 1 year than most couples face in a lifetime. I think we've earned crazy." He was right, again. Frustratingly, impossibly right. "I don't want a big wedding," Celine said, "or a fancy dress, or any of that traditional stuff. Fine by me. And I'm keeping my name. I'm not becoming Mrs. Moretti. I wouldn't expect anything else. And I'm not moving to some compound or fortress. We stay in the city, in this penthouse, in our life." "Agreed." Celine studied his face, looking for doubt, for hesitation, for any sign that this was impulse rather than intention. All she saw was certainty. "Okay," she said quietly. "Okay? Okay, I'll marry you. I'll choose you every day. I'll figure out this ridiculous life with you." Lucian's smile was brilliant, transforming. He pulled a small box from his pocket, because of course he had a ring ready, and opened it. The diamond was simple, elegant, probably cost more than Celine would make in 5 years. But it was beautiful in a way that felt right. He slipped it onto her finger. Perfect fit. "How long have you been planning this?" she asked. She had. "Since the hospital. After the warehouse. When I woke up and you were there." Lucian's voice was rough. "I knew then. I just had to wait for the right moment." "And burning pasta was the right moment?" "You being yourself was the right moment." Celine laughed, cried, kissed him hard enough to forget about the city below, about the danger circling, about everything except this. When they finally pulled apart, both breathless, Lucian said, "No regrets?" "Not one." Even knowing what this life is, what it will always be, especially knowing that. Celine touched his face. Because I'd rather have a complicated life with you than a safe life without you. That might be the most reckless thing you've ever said. I learned from the best. They stood on the balcony as night deepened around them, engaged, committed, choosing each other despite or because of every rational reason not to. It was insane. It was perfect. It was exactly what Celine had been missing her entire life without knowing it. Adventure, passion, someone who saw her completely and loved her anyway. What happens now? She asked. Now we plan a wedding, live our lives, handle whatever the city throws at us. Lucien pulled her close. Together. Together, Celine agreed. And somewhere in the distance, New York glittered endlessly. A city built on accidents and wrong turns and impossible chances. The perfect place for two broken people who'd found forever through a message meant for someone else. The perfect place to build something real from chaos. The perfect place to choose love over safety. Again and again and again. Oops. The end. The rain had stopped by the time their story became legend. People would talk about them for years. The waitress and the mob boss. The accidental photo that changed everything. The woman who killed to save him. The man who burned the city down to find her. Some said it was romantic. Others called it reckless. Both were right. But Celine and Lucien didn't care what people said. They were too busy living. Building a photography studio in Brooklyn. Maintaining the uneasy peace between families, surviving the constant dance between danger and domesticity. Their wedding was small. City Hall. Just witnesses. Tony stood as best man. Helena from the gallery stood with Celine. No fancy dress, no big reception. Just two people choosing each other in front of a bored clerk who'd married 100 couples that day and would barely remember them. It was perfect. Marco Valenti sent a gift, expensive wine, and a note that read, "To unlikely alliances and even unlikelier friendships, may you both survive each other." They drank the wine on their balcony, toasted to survival, to accidents, to messages sent to wrong numbers that turned out to be exactly right. The treaty held for 3 more years before finally fracturing, not because of Marco's replacement, because of federal pressure, indictments, operations shut down. But by then, Lucien had already started transitioning out, shifting to legitimate businesses, using the council infrastructure to pivot entire operations toward legal ventures. It was slow, painful, required sacrifices that cost him allies. But Celine was worth it. Being with her was worth it. Building a life that didn't require constant violence was worth it. They never completely escaped his past. People still recognized the name Moretti, still whispered, still wondered, but they built something real anyway. A life, a marriage, a partnership. Celine's photography became internationally recognized. Her shadows graced gallery walls in Paris, Tokyo, London. She never forgot where she came from. Still shot Brooklyn streets, still found beauty in darkness. Lucien became a consultant, helped businesses navigate complex negotiations, used his skills for strategy instead of survival. He never talked about his past publicly, but he never hid from it either. They bought a house outside the city, kept the penthouse for when they needed to be in Manhattan, split their time between worlds. It worked because they both understood something fundamental. You couldn't escape who you were. You could only choose what you became, and they chose each other every single day, through the good and the bad, through danger and peace, through the ordinary moments that made up a life. On their 10th anniversary, Celine took a photograph of Lucien standing at their country house window, light streaming in, shadows pooling at his feet, the man caught between darkness and illumination. She titled it Wrong Number. It won awards, sold for an obscene amount of money, became one of her most famous pieces. Because everyone understood what it really captured. Not just a man at a window, but the moment two people found each other by accident and chose to stay on purpose. The moment chaos became choice. The moment a message sent to the wrong number became the rightest thing that ever happened. And years later, when people asked Celine if she regretted any of it, The violence, the danger, the impossible complications of loving a man like Lucian Moretti, she always gave the same answer, not for a second. Because some mistakes were worth making, some accidents were actually fate wearing a disguise, and some love stories began with wrong numbers and ended with forever. This was one of them.